Testing.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are just awaiting the arrival of one or two more of our panelists. They will be here in the next minute or so we will get kicked off shortly. I do apologize for the slight delay. There was some very bad traffic due to an accident at Rapenburg Road, so we will get kicked off very shortly. I thank my panelists for their patience as well. We will get kicked off very shortly. Thank you. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. That's it. Lovely. I'd like to set the tone for a very robust and engaged discussion this morning. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to IOL's third Elections panel discussion. We are today in the Western Cape at the beautiful Taj Hotel, having completed our panel discussions in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal. My name is Lance Witten. I am the editor of IOL. Welcome. Thank you all for honoring the invitation to be here today. We have with us quite possibly the most election panel there ever has been. Quite a large gathering of political parties here for the Western Cape leg of our event series. I am very, very excited about this. We are on the doorstep of, I think, one of the most important elections since 1994. We are 30 years into our democracy. We have a large component of political parties. We have parties with representation in the National Assembly. We have parties with seats in municipal councils at the provincial level, all represented here. We wanted as far as possible to have a diversity of voices. I want to thank my panelists again. I will introduce them all very, very shortly. But before I do so, I'd like to welcome to the stage our Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Vyasan Subramani, the IOL CEO, to come up and say a few words, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Lance, and thank you to our representatives from the political parties. I did start off with a joke in Johannesburg, and I said I wasn't sure what tie to wear, but I've used that one already. But I'd just like you to put your hands together for the class of 2024. This looks like a perfect school photograph ever. Ladies and gentlemen, today is about a diversity of voices. It's about different opinions, and more importantly, how to uplift the people of the Western Cape. And as a media platform, one of South Africa's leading media platforms, we believe it's very important for us to put civil society, representative community members in the same room as elected officials and officials that are vying for your vote, so that we can understand exactly what their plans are and what they plan to do to uplift the people of the Western Cape. So without further ado, I'm not going to take up too much of time. I think all of the time needs to be spent on the panelists and to hear your questions and your voices. So welcome, and we're looking forward to a very robust discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, so thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to now introduce our panel to you. I'm going to take a seat because this might take a while, as you can clearly see. The first seat here taken up by our Western Cape Premier, the current sitting Premier, Mr. Alan Winde, representing the Democratic Alliance. Next to him is Mr. Anthony Mitchell from the IFP. We have Mr. Neil De Beer representing representing UIM. We have next to him Mr. Sammy Claassen representing the PMC, Mr. Nazir Paulsen representing the EFF, Ms. Lumka Mkluko representing BOSA. We have Ms. Fairuz Nagia representing Al Jamaa. We have Sankara Bizela representing the MK Party, Mr. Cameron Dugmore representing the ANC. We have Angela Sobi representing Action SA, Akolile Notwala representing representing Rise Mzansi. We have Mr. Brett Hedden representing the Good Party. We have Mr. Faisal Syed representing AM4C. And finally, right at the end of the panel, Mr. Fadil Adams representing the NCC. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our illustrious panel here today. So the panelists will each have an opportunity to make an opening statement. Ladies and gentlemen, you have 90 seconds. I will be timing you. I'm not sure how parliamentary that timing is, but this is IOL timing. You are in my hands today. So I am the honorable speaker today, and I relish this opportunity. I don't think I would ever find myself in Parliament, but apart from covering it. But you will have 90 seconds to present your party's vision for the Western Cape. We will have some questions posed by myself to the party representatives, and then we will take some questions from the floor. I ask, before we we begin that when we take questions from the floor, that your questions be pointed and directed to a specific candidate. These are the politicians, so the statements, please, if you can keep them to questions. So please direct your questions and try and keep them as short as possible and directed to a specific candidate. Mr. Alan Wendy, what is the DA's plan for the province of the Western Cape, having been in charge for the last 5 years at least?
Thank you very much, Malweni. Good morning, Goeiemorgen, and thanks, Lance. And I think you are correct. 30 years into our democracy, there's still a lot to do, and I'm pretty proud of the last 5 years, and of course I want to build on it and grow further. I mean, definitely the Western Cape rated as the best performing province in South Africa across all matrix. But my focus specifically is jobs, bringing down crime, and making sure that we enable the economy. That's sorting out the load shedding in the energy system. So, of course, jobs, I'm amazed every time I look at the number, just short of 80%, 78.9% of all new jobs in the last 5 years came from one province. That obviously means there's an ecosystem developing here. 150,000 people vote with their feet every single year and come to this province for schooling, for health, and for job opportunities. And, of course, we must keep on doing that. We've got a pledge now with a Growth for Jobs plan. Another 800,000 jobs in the next 5 years. We've shown a track record it can be done, and of course we will continue doing that. I think crime is a massive issue that faces so many of our citizens every single day. I started 5 years ago with bringing some really clever people together from across the world and locally, saying what should we be doing within the constitutional framework, and that was when the safety plan was born. The LEAP officers and the idea of more boots on the ground, but also the violence prevention plan. And of course, if you now look at the measurement, international measurement, as well as independent local measurement, we were the murder capital of South Africa 5 years ago. We are no longer the murder capital. We're not out of it, but we're no longer.
Mr. Wendy, that is your time. That is your time. I wanted you to finish that point about the murder capital. We'll come back to crime. Mr. Anthony Mitchell, what is the IFP's plan for the Western Cape?
Thank you very much, Lance, and good morning to you, and good morning to your viewers and the people present. As you know, the IFP is relatively new to Western Cape politics, but we are not new to national politics. We've been in existence for nearly 50 years and campaigning at provincial, national, and local level since 1994. The IFP, just for the people that don't know, is a fairly centrist party. So I think the role that we can play, we're not going to come here and tell you that we're going to govern the Western Cape, because we know we're not going to. But the role that we can play is the role that we have played in Parliament, and that is the role of the voice of reason, the role of pragmatism, the role of not getting into the sideshows and getting into issues and tackling issues. And that's what the IFP does, and that's what we have been doing. Almost recently, you know, we are very big on environmental issues. Besides the other main issues that we're talking about, we held an environmental dialogue in Parliament. Okay, parliamentary interaction with people is at an all-time low. I think it's at about 37%. So that's something that we want to increase something we want to increase.
Anthony, sorry, if you could just hold the mic a little bit closer to your...
There we go. Something that we want to increase going forward, and we will be having more of those dialogues going forward. Case in point, one of our projects is Great African Sea Forest, massive issue for biodiversity, for conservation, for stemming the tide of climate change, and something that we need to get into. Another important point, not only in Cape Town, but South Africa, crime and safety, JCPS cluster. We want to see a working police force. We want to see a police force that's capacitated.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. I did build in an extra 10 seconds for the
Thank you very much, Lance. Well appreciated.
Thank you. Mr. Neil de Beer has been part of elections since 1994, but now contesting the elections as his own party with UIM. Mr. de Beer, what is UIM's plan for the Western Cape?
Ja, Malweni, away. I'm a retired veteran that's been forced to come back and to start mooring people again. I feel old and tired. Into new way, Nomsland. It's very easy for me. I was born here, and I love every single human being that stays here. And I can't say that on behalf of any other party, some of them sitting here. The UIM will not divide. The UIM will not govern. The main responsibility of the UIM right now is to sit back, to hear what other political parties are promising and saying, to very detailedly script it, analyze it, record it, and then on 1 June, to go back to the people and to say, we will keep every person that made a on-record promise accountable until death do us part. Because accountability, it seems, is squashed later when the ballots are done. Our party, the only function I've got, is to ensure that the promises that are made will be publicly scrutinized, and we will do everything to ensure that they are kept accountable to the book viciously, if necessary. And that's what the people of South Africa is actually asking. Jobs and justice, those are the two words. Without jobs and without justice, no economy, no people can ever be free.
Thank you.
And I want to, may I just say, there's a face in the audience, an esteemed judge, and I wanted to say, well, to have you here today. Jobs and justice, daar begin het. Sommer daar.
I'm very interested in Mr. De Beer saying that he's going to hold every political party up here to account. I would not want to hear that threat from a former intelligence officer. So, Mr. Sammy Claassen, what is your party's plan for the Western Cape, sir?
Ja, baie dankie. Ek voel nou baie geïntimideerd om langs 'n spy te sit. But nevertheless, good morning. My name is Sammy Claassen. I'm the head of elections of the PMC. The People's Movement for Change is about 4 months old. The leader of the party is Marius Fransman, an astute campaigner for justice, an internationalist, and a man that campaigned for Africa. So the People's Movement for Change is about the following. We're bringing people back to the main table. We've seen under the ANC government and under the DA in the Western Cape, there's a disconnect, a serious disconnect with the people, where the people's needs, bread and butter issues, have been taken for granted. We're sitting with load shedding. In the Western Cape, we've seen that the unemployment rate has increased from 2011 up until 2021, from 18% to 29%. So the People's Movement for Change is about the following. We're sitting under ANC and DA government with unemployment, poverty, inequality, crime that increased to the highest levels that we've ever seen in the world. So the PMC is saying that all those socio-economic issues needs to be addressed. We can only address it to the two main issues. We need an economic Odessa in South Africa. Because we're voting for 30 years. En ons mense sit in armoede. Ons mense sit unemployed. Youth unemployment is sitting at 76%. That is no future for this country when your youth are not at work. They are uneducated, they need skills.
Thank you, Mr.
And so the PMC will push that agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go over to Mr. Nazir Paulson, representing the EFF today. Nazir, what is the EFF's plan for the Western Cape?
Good morning. Thank you, Lance, and good morning to the audience as well. I'm not just representing the EFF today, I represent the EFF every day, Lance. Lance, 30 years into democracy has not translated to much change for black people, Africans and coloureds, and especially here in the Western Cape where the DA has governed for 15 years. If you have to look at what the issues are, high crime rate, and the DA's approach to crime is to treat it at the tertiary level once they are criminals already. So they want to put drones in the sky and boots on the ground, but that is dealing with the result of DA failures. One has to address crime at the primary level. Now, what is the primary level of crime? When people are poorly educated, poor, and ill. It leads to possible criminality. So we have to deal with it at that primary level, okay? So so once he becomes a teenager, there'd be less chance of that person going astray. When you have proper sporting facilities, which is being denied to our people here in the Western Cape, and especially in Cape Town, and you know, the problem with the DA is that they believe that they have to continue with what was there before. So we still have apartheid spatial divide. We don't have integrated communities under this DA government. This DA's approach to, if we look at the levels of homelessness, there are 600,000 families on a waiting list. And the DA says they build 20,000 houses a year. 20,000 houses a year would take 30 years to deal with the backlog of the DA.
We'll need to move on. Thank you. Thank you, Nazir. Mr. Wendy, as the governing party in the Western Cape, this is the place where you catch strays, but we'll give you an opportunity to respond on some of those issues a little bit later on. We now move over to Ms. Lumka Kulko. Lumka, what is Build One South Africa's plan for the Western Cape?
Thank you, Lance, and good morning, everybody. I just want to start by saying, you know, Build One South Africa is not just a political platform, political party. Build One South Africa is a call to action to everybody, every single South African that believes in a post-ANC South Africa, that believes in a post-DA Western Cape, to come together and let's build one South Africa. There's too many South Africans, lots of realities for South Africans, and what we want to do is make sure that we get everybody, collaborate with everybody to build a South Africa 2.0, right? And the way we want to do this is we have a jobs plan. We want to put a job in every home. And how we're going to do this is we're going to grow the economy for jobs. We're going to reform our education system for jobs. We're going to create a safe environment for jobs. And we're going to build a capable state for jobs. So how are we going to grow the economy for jobs? We've got three things. One, creating township special economic zones in townships to rebuild and revitalize our township economies, making sure that we invest in businesses to be able to generate jobs, to be able to support and resource startups that are in townships to make sure that they generate jobs. We want to make sure that we have a jobs and justice fund that is also, you know, through partnerships with private sector, with NGOs, with faith-based organizations, to make sure that we create jobs, but we also address the issues of social justice in our townships. What we also want to do is make sure we reform our education systems, because we're not just dealing with unemployed people, we are dealing with unemployable people. We need to make sure that we upskill our people to be able to thrive in environments when it comes to employment.
Thank you
Thank you
Lumka.
very much.
Thank you. Nazir, I think you should keep your own time there. You'll notice that everyone is given the same amount of time. Fairuz Nagia from Al Jamaa, lovely to have Al Jamaa represented here today. What is your party's plan for the Western Cape?
Thank you so much, Lance, and good morning to everybody. Look, as Al Jamaa, firstly, I want to celebrate the diversity that we have today, and this certainly bears testimony to the civic and political rights which we've gained over the past few years, but certainly on a socio-economic front, we have very far to go. Now, globally, nationally, and provincially, people are becoming awake to what the systems of oppression actually are. When we look at the laws in our particular country and across the globe, we know that people are told, if you have your rights and you need to have it vindicated, take it to the courts. The courts can only do so much. We have legislation in place that still stems from the pre-democratic era. And then we have laws that have been promulgated which still continue to oppress and disenfranchise our people. So we have to ask ourselves, why are we allowing that to continue? And Al Jamaa says, if we want meaningful change, then that is the place that we need to look at. So we have currently in place legislation that speaks about labor tenants to groups of people whose indigenous rights over that land should actually be recognized, but it's not. So that's just one of the elements that we need to look at. How do we effect meaningful change? How do we effect lasting change for our people, that no matter which system of government or which structure of government they go to, their rights can be vindicated? And that is the approach Al-Jamaah takes. And that is in addition to the actual projects that we have within communities, looking at local economic development, etc. So these are how to effect meaningful change from a level of national, provincial, and local. And Al-Jamaah has the courage and Al-Jamaah has the skills to do that and the political will to do that.
Thank you, Fairuz, for being the only candidate who's managed to do it in 90 seconds. Let's move over to Mr. Sankara Bizela, another newcomer to the national political contestation. Sankara, what is MK Party's plan?
Guys, goeiemorgen, molweni. Okay, the MK seeks to undo the iconic image of Cape Town, the one that always has the marginalized people behind the veil. You start by affirming and recenter the indigenous people of this country through the Western Cape, the Khoisan as the First Nation, recenter and affirm linguistically, economically, and culturally, so that you deal with the structural issue of South Africa, because the economic reality of this country is just like the Western Cape, how it is shaped. Wherever you go, outside the iconic image of Waterfront, Musenberg, and Table Mountain, you find Hanover Park, you find extortion in Kailicha and everywhere, because there's still very much poverty. People are still languishing in poverty. And there's a crime that has resulted from unemployment and all these issues that the DA has been overlooking, because it has been claiming the unemployment rate that is skyrocketing, but it is never a reality of Western Cape. Hence, if one lady in the township is trying to have some flats at the back or some crèche, there will be some gangsters who will come and demand a protection fee and all of those things. And then we believe that the Western Cape government, as led by the DA, is not attending to the issue. This is perpetuating the marginalization of our people into the mainstream economic activity. So now to use the First Nation, the Khoisan brothers and sisters and our elders there as the metonym of the reality of South Africa as the larger economic and social context.
Thank you, Sankara. Okay. We're going to have to cut you there. We'll come back to First Peoples. I think it's an important issue that we need to address as well. We have to move on to the ANC. Mr. Cameron Dugmore, the ANC governed this province in the past. How does the ANC plan to reclaim the Western Cape, and what are the plans for ANC governance here?
Thank you very much, Lance. I think we're all aware of the fact that the ANC's vision of building a united, a non-racial, a non-sexist, and a prosperous country is essentially the same vision that we have for the Western Cape. And I think it's an undeniable fact that over 30 years, there's been incredible progress in this country. No one can deny that. And for instance, 650,000 workers now benefit from share ownership schemes. We have 10 million learners in no-fee schools, and I could go on. But I think the issue is that we've also had challenges and problems. And one of the problems is that in terms of the Western Cape reaching that non-racial prosperity is that you've had a party here that for 15 years has essentially looked after the privileged minority elite. They talk about a province that works for all. We all know that that is a lie. And we have governed this province before. We have 6 pillars to our manifesto. Jobs, the issue of industrialization, key sectors in this province. We need to grow the oceans economy in a very particular way. It's not that we don't have national resources. Those 6 priorities, including the issue of investing in our people. Education, this province has gone backwards under the DA, no longer the #1 matric, too few, less than Limpopo, in fact, matric endorsement passes. And what we want to do is ensure that the Western Cape is part of this country, not like the DA who gives space to the referendum party that wants to separate our country. We want one united Western Cape, and we don't want a province that fights with national And that's why the people of the Western Cape are getting the short end of the stick, because the national is being undermined by the elitist policies of the DA. And it's time that the manifesto of the ANC is implemented fully in this province.
To the other four pillars of, yes, thank you, Nazir. We'll move on to, that was not 2 minutes, 10 seconds. Angela Sobey from Action SA. What is Action SA's plan for the Western Cape?
Thank you so much. Action SA represents the emergence of new parties into politics, necessitated by failures of establishment political parties at national, provincial, and local government levels. Action SA wants to ensure a province that works for all, and not just a particular demographic or a minority. Looking around the Western Cape, you see a lack of political will and accountability, which mirrors what is happening across the country at a national level. The challenges that hit the underprivileged communities that live on the outskirts of the city are challenges such as unemployment as a result of the fishing and textile industries, which have completely disappeared over the last 30 years, poverty, substance abuse, gender-based violence and femicide in the province is one of the highest, as well as substance abuse, crime, gangsterism, and homelessness as a result of that. The homelessness is also linked to apartheid legacy spatial planning. These challenges hit these communities the hardest, and these communities live on the periphery of the city. As a candidate that was raised on the Cape Flats, and as a candidate that resonates with these challenges, as Action SA, I represent a political alternative to the people of the Western Cape, speaking from lived experience as a woman and a mother wanting to work for the people of the Western Cape, with the people of the Western Cape. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Let's move over to Akolile from, sorry, from Rise and Zansi. I do apologize, Akolile, there's a lot of, lots of panelists. Akolile, what is your party's plan for the Western Cape?
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. Rise Mzansi exists with a vision to build a South Africa and a Western Cape that is safe, united, equal, and prosperous in one generation where everyone can live a happy and dignified life. And we know that that doesn't exist in the province of the Western Cape. And a week ago, we launched the Bridge Western Cape Plan, because this is a province that remains divided in terms of race, in terms of class, and in terms of space. Hence, some of the priorities for Rise Mzansi, number one is to say we need to build and create safe communities. And we say no one is safe in the Western Cape until all of us are safe. We hear about people being robbed in Table Mountain, tourists being robbed in Table Mountain, and we hear outcries when that is happening, but people are being killed each and every day in townships in the Western Cape. This is the most murderous province in the country, with 11 of the top 30 highest murder rate police stations being situated in the Western Cape. We also want to build integrated human settlements where over the last 30 years, the government under the ANC and under the DA over the last 15 years haven't built a single social and affordable housing within the CBD or closer to the CBD. It is those divides that Rise Mzansi exists to build. We need to make sure that land is not sold to the highest bidders, that it is used for a social and public value. And we know the DA government continues to sell land in the province that could be used to house people.
Thank you. We'll move on to the Good Party with Brett Hedden. What is Good's plan, sir?
Thank you, Lance, and good morning, everybody. Look, 30 years post-1994, South Africa is a fundamentally different country to what it was in 1994. We have to acknowledge that. But still, we have 55% of South Africans living in poverty, struggling and suffering every single day. And that suffering is no different in the Western Cape. And so we want to end the suffering. And part of ending the suffering is to deal with some of the injustices that persist from pre-1994, and one of them is spatial injustice. The fact that in the Western Cape in particular, we have failed to address the segregation, the racial segregation, the original sin of land deprivation that is part of colonial and apartheid South Africa's legacy, by using public land for public good. That is, to use public land to integrate towns and cities, by building well-located, affordable housing where government-owned lands in well-located places in the inner city, but also to invest in those communities. We won't be able to move everybody for spatial integration, but we do need to invest in communities that have been underinvested in for the last 100 years. Those communities are obvious for everybody to see. You can see the disparity in the infrastructure in those communities. You can see the disparity in the services in those communities. And so the social challenges, the economic challenges, the inputs that give rise to crime in these high crime prevalent areas can all be stemmed back to a failure to invest in spatial justice, to address the inequalities in our spatial environment. And so we will, as one of the things we'll focus on in the Western Cape, is to address the inequalities and the spatial injustice.
Thank you,
I want to challenge Alan's stats, because I think he's lying with statistics. The Western Cape has not created 79% of the jobs in South Africa.
We'll come back to that
and we
point.
can't leave that unchallenged.
We will come back to that. Thank you. Mr. Faisal Sayed, AM4C, what is your party's plan for the Western Cape?
Thank you, Lance, and thank you, IOL, for the opportunity. But before I start, just discussing the four things that we're looking at as the AM4C, I must start off saying that, you know, this is the first time that I'm actually sitting on these platforms. And before this, I was outside and I realized that all the political parties at this moment are just pole dancers. They're all on the polls at the moment, heading to the polls. And that's what they're going to do every election. They're going to come here, making loads of promises, and they're going to sit here talking a whole lot of nonsense like the Premier just did, the outgoing Premier, Mr. Windy. And then what's going to happen after that is that they're going to disappear for the next couple of years. And therefore, I want to say that we stand for four things. That's economic growth through job creation, crime and corruption, and then the last thing is returning the wealth of this land to the people of this land. But I must say that when talking about returning the wealth of the land to the people of the land, how is it that you have a mentality here in the Western Cape that says that one man's genocide is another man's freedom? If you have that mentality, then one man's poorness is another man's wealth. We've got a problem in the Western Cape. So whilst I mentioned the four matters, we got one bigger problem, and that's the Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape. So I don't agree with anything what the ANC sometimes says, because they're all dead already and buried. But the issue is, sorry, Mr. Dugmore, those people are all gone. But the issue is that I must agree with Mr. Dugmore, we've got a problem. I must agree with Brett, we have a problem. And that is the people sitting on that side of the room. If we don't take a stance against these people, with yourself and other people, then we have a problem in the Western Cape, because our people are not eating, they're not drinking, and they're not sleeping. Thank you.
All right, let's move on to Fadil Adams, another candidate contesting elections for the first time with the National Coloured Congress. Fadil?
Thank you, Lance. I'm pleasantly surprised. I'd like to thank the MK Party for at least recognizing the Aboriginal people of the Western Cape. You would have noticed that no one else did. That's why I'm here. We are committed as the NCC to ending the genocide on the Cape Flats. The genocide engineered by the Democratic Alliance. As the NCC, we are committing to end the only ground where the ANC and the DA find themselves as friends, the marginalization of the coloured child in the workplace. You walk into any place in Cape Town, show us the colours. We are not a non-entity, but I'm sitting here today representing people who are hopeless. We are committed to ending white supremacy in the Western Cape that is so flippant that a mere 8% of white people occupy 50% of all management positions in the Western Cape, while coloured people with degrees sit at home or worse. As the NCC, we are committed to returning the land that was taken, listen to how I say it to you, taken from us, scars from which we will never recover. We are committed as the NCC to ending the DA in the Western Cape by any means necessary. I say to you today, Lance, South Africa, that this country will never heal until it treats the colored community fairly. Until we have that day, we can forget about talking about freedom. Remember, Nelson Mandela says, our freedom, it can never be complete until the Palestinian people are free. Yet, South Africa finds itself with its own version of the Palestinian people. You know them as the coloreds. 2024, we bring you the colored spring. Mr. Premier, you need to empty our house. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. All right. Inequality is obviously a very, very big talking point here in the Western Cape. And I think I will start off with Mr. Premier Alan Winde. Premier, if we look at the DA often says this is the best run province. There are questions that come up, the best run province for whom? The best run province for the leafy suburbs only? What about Mitchell's Plain? What about Kailicha? What about Nyanga? Let's talk about the spreading of service delivery to those areas, particularly taking into consideration some of the points that have been raised as an attack on the DA. How do you plan to address this inequality going forward, with this perceived lack of service delivery in non-white areas or formerly white areas?
Thank you very much. So obviously, you know, our budget of 255 billion over the next year, over the next 3 years, the majority of that budget, 75%, actually gets spent in the areas that you're talking about. Because we do not build hospitals in Constantia. We build hospitals in Khayelitsha and Mitchell's Plain. We do not build schools in Constantia. We build them in Luandle. We build them, you know, that's where our money gets spent. That's how the Constitution aligns our role as the province. But you said I must be able to counter some of these statements. So Sammy says in 2011, our unemployment rate in the province was 18%, and now it's 21 or 20.3% actually, not 21. But in actual fact, in that same period, the national unemployment rate was 21.42%. It is now 42%, and of course 72%, as he says, for youth unemployment. There's a 10% differential between the province and the national number, and there's a 12% between the province number and the national number for youth unemployment. Of course, the next thing is the you know, the EFF saying, I mean, he didn't come with any plan today. But the real measurement is, and of course, there are so many people that have got to, you know, find opportunity in our new democracy. There absolutely are. But the Gini coefficient is the best measurement of the gap between rich and poor. And just go and have a look at the Gini coefficient in this province. There's only one place in South Africa, and it's still way too high, but it comes down every single year. At a national level, it has not come down at all. It remains exactly stagnant. So the national number, there is no benefit, there is no narrowing of rich and poor, but in this province, it's because jobs actually enable you to find a difference in your household. And then I must, perhaps also just lastly on the EFF, you know, it's very interesting. The EFF needed to bring a plan here, but they actually do govern in this province. They govern in Knysna at the moment, and there's zero services where they govern. And in actual fact, I think the honourable member here should go and have a look at what his member was doing last night, meeting with one of the biggest developers in town who owes the municipality 60 million rand in back rates and taxes. And in actual fact, at 9 o'clock last night, their member was meeting him. They're writing off that debt, and they're renting his property at the same time. So he says one thing here, but they do exactly the opposite. And then, of course, I want to say that...
No. Please let Mr. Winde finish.
Then, of course, I want to say that specifically we talk about land. And, I mean, yeah, quite frankly, we've got a lot of work to do to change those apartheid pieces of legislation and find spaces for people to live. But the 43,000 housing opportunities in the last 5 years in this province, go to Conradie and go and have a look at how we need to innovate and find different ways of densifying closer to the city. And then, of course, in the city itself, right now, we've got the New Market Street property development, the Salt River Market, the Pickwick fruit and veg right here in the middle of the CBD and Earl Street. And then there are two other places. There are two other places. And that, of course, is Helen Bowden and the Woodstock Hospital. Two prime pieces of property. And in actual fact, I think Razim Zanzi's premier candidate was quite involved in that stage of illegal occupation and promoting illegal occupation of these properties.
I'm going to have to stop you there, Mr. Wendy. Thank you. I want to come back to Mr. Neil de Beer very quickly, because quite curiously, all of the members, I'm going to come to you, Fadil. All of the members were speaking about governing this province. You were the only representative who said you're not interested in governing, you're interested in holding to account. How would you, differently to these parties, hold the Democratic Alliance to account on some of these issues?
Ja, is maklik ons moer hulle. This room is becoming intimidating because minute by minute, if it's not Judge Desai, then it is Dr. Iqbal survey. Certain members of my mentorship, so I'm a bit under pressure. The only one that's not here is Madiba, who I was a student of. I'm going to say just 3 things categorically. You can only shoot so many criminals a night. I've tried. I'm running out of time. Criminality and gangsterism, which I go out in the road every night. The people know that. They see me at night with my mask. Gangsterism's sole responsibility doesn't just lie with crime. There's a social dysfunctionality that has happened in this Western Cape. Instead of just shooting gangsters, annihilating that, we should go back and find out what a broken home caused in the first place. That's where our problem starts. I know the gangsters. We should make sure new people don't become it. Secondly, I'm not a politician. I was a soldier, a businessman, and now a diplomat, and unfortunately, a politician. Ek hou nie van julle nie. I don't like you.
Neil.
I've never liked you, but give me 1 minute.
No, that's
There's
me.
a solution.
Neil.
There's a solution. Can I
here.
tell you what's the solution?
I'm here.
I'm with you, and unfortunately, I'm linked to you as a brother. Here's the thing. If all of us for once in our life, all of us here, understand that we have one job to do, and that is to hear the people speak, make the voices heard, and make sure that the people do govern. These are the things that we all surely agree on. And we will get together. We will mood each other now. We will call each other dumb on Monday and Friday undumb. I don't know how we're going to get that done. But the DA is here. I don't agree. The ANC, 26 years with them, and I'm an MK veteran. I will land my plane right now. I believe that this country can unite. I believe that the injustices that were done can be rectified. And that the people sit here and talk about the First Nation. I don't get it why that group of people have to fight for rights. 100%. They had rights since birth, and we need to get that thing done. That's the solution. I said I don't want to govern. I just want to sit and see the government govern and gee hulle gas when they don't. And I think that's why I'm standing here today.
Thank you.
And it's a pleasure being here today amongst the peers.
Let's go to Fadil. Fadil's been wanting to say something, and then I'll go to Brett. Fadil?
I just have a quick rebuttal for the Premier of all things Zionist and illegitimate. 76% of the budget is spent where it's needed. Is the Premier aware of the fact that 90% of this province is poor? The Premier is admitting that 24% of the budget is spent on the rich. He's just said it. In addition to that, he's bragging about the hospital he's built in Mitchell's Plain. He closed the hospital in Mannenberg, GF Twister. They've been promising Mannenberg that hospital for 15 years. The poor people from Mannenberg, when they get sick, have to travel to Mitchell's Plain. That's incompetence, that's criminality. Furthermore, yes, Mr. Premier, build a school in Luanle. No problem at all. Everybody's deserving of education. But when are you building schools in Mitchell's Plain and Lavender Hill? You know what you do when your department returns money? You close schools in colored areas. It's why the dropout rate is so high. It's why our children kill each other. But you're sitting here today explaining to us how lucky we are to live under DA rule. Here's something for you, Mr. Premier. The colored people in El Dorado Park are safer than the colored people in Mannenberg. That's how well you govern.
Thank you. Mr. Hedden.
Yeah, Lance, I wanted to just respond to the land question. I mean, first of all, for how long must the people of the Western Cape hear from the DA that they intend to use land that they have complete control over, and they haven't developed in 15 years, And now we're going into the next election with Alan Winde saying we're going to use the same land that they've been promising previously to develop housing on. Yet not one house has been built in any of that, on any of that land. The province and the city were ordered by the Western Cape that they have a duty to redress the legacy of spatial apartheid. And they took that on appeal. Can you imagine going to take on appeal an order that says you have a duty as a government to redress spatial inequality and the legacy of apartheid South Africa? And now you take that on appeal and you win the appeal in the Supreme Court of Appeals, but the moral and the ethical response to that Western Cape judgment is seriously problematic. From a government that's now promising to use land that they've always had access to in order to develop this well-located housing. I want to make an example. In 2010, the Western Cape government issued a prospectus in which they identified 5 parcels of land in the inner city with a vague promise to developing densified housing, including affordable housing. In 2010, not one of those sites has been developed, not one. So why must we believe them this time? They have no intention of addressing the spatial policy of apartheid that is the legacy in the Western Cape.
Thank you, Brett. Akolile, your party got caught some fire a little earlier for occupying a building. Would you like to respond to that?
Yes, and this is not the first time that the DA has lied about me, misinformation. John Steenhuisen, in a debate a few days ago, said the same thing. And I challenged the DA to bring the evidence that I led occupations if they don't, because I have the evidence that the DA-led City of Cape Town illegally evicted people. And this is why they are accusing me of leading occupations, because I was there defending people that were illegally evicted by the City of Cape Town's law enforcement. And that's why now they say that you will find law enforcement in these townships. Law enforcement is not there for safety purposes. Law enforcement is there so that they can be closer when they have to conduct an illegal evictions in these communities. Otherwise, if law enforcement was there for safety purposes, these communities would be safer. They have deployed law enforcement so that they can continue to illegally evict. During COVID, the City of Cape Town, DA-led City of Cape Town, evicted Bulelani Kolani naked, and they demolished his home. That's the nature of the government, which I stood against, and now they are lying about me and saying I led those occupations. I challenge them to bring that evidence, because the evidence of illegal evictions is also in the High Court, where they have lost, and the court has told them that they evicted people illegally.
Thank you. I want to, members of the panel, I know that there are representatives from Ndifuna Ukwazi in our audience. Do we have representatives from Ndifuna Ukwazi? I want to touch on this housing issue. Do we have any questions from the floor on that matter, land and housing? No? Mr. Dagmo? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Iksan, just hang on for a mic quickly.
Thank you. I'm not from Ndifuna Ukwazi, but it's on the issue of the housing issue that Mr. Winde spoke about. Now, the issue of Salt River Market, which you so proudly pronounce upon, South Africans do not know that you brought an urgent application against all the people that's currently in the Salt River Market. That's the traders and all people that work for them. Cowardly, the DA or the DA-led government, this city, I know you are the province, but it's the same thing to us. Cowardly, you brought a High Court urgent application against the tenants of the Salt River Market. Those poor people, they must now defend something which you could have easily negotiated with them, very easily. And then to add insult to injury, you actually ask that those people pay your costs, whether they defend it or not. So for you to do something like to poor people, I hope that South Africa remembers that type of cowardice. And the fact that you are building yuppie flats in Salt River, our homeland, under the guise of community housing under Shira. The point is, it's a few units of Shira, but mostly it will be yuppie flats going up there with a beautiful view of the harbor in Woodstock. The reality is that you do not care about the poor people You do not care about businesses that wants to make a living. You do not care about the people who's going to lose their jobs. Some of those people have been trading there for 80 years, 45 years, to simply get a high court application, which they are forced to now defend because there's the threat of having to pay the cost of your expensive lawyers. These are things that the people of South Africa must know when they look at that ballot paper. So,
Thank you.
and also last thing, while I'm on the floor, all these politicians are speaking about jobs. Why are they speaking about jobs? They're speaking about opportunities for business, that people can be in charge of their own destiny, and they can employ their own people, but they're only focusing on jobs, which is basically a perpetuation of this capitalist system where unemployment thrives in a pool of unemployment.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Son.
you.
I want to give Mr. Windy an opportunity
No,
to
but
respond
Lance,
while we move the
Lance,
mic to this gentleman in the
Lance.
black jacket here.
But you can't give the Premier twice when some of us haven't been able to respond.
I agree. I agree with you, Cameron. I do apologize. Please, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I think what we're dealing with here, Lance and members of the audience, is deep inequality and divisions in our province, right? Diversity, issues of language, class, culture. And this province actually is part of our country. And what has happened under the DA is the fact that they've tried to exacerbate divisions. And that is our main problem. If we saw yesterday, there were 3 Zionist thugs that beat up 2 women, pro-Palestinian supporters. And the thing is, I just want to use this example on the issue of diversity and unity in this Cape Town and in this province. This is the 3rd time it's happened. In the Divaterkant, a woman, happened to be white, pro-Palestinian, got assaulted by another Zionist. Someone running a marathon, assaulted someone who had a Palestinian flag. Now, the DA, let's be very frank, one of the inclusive, our province has African, colored, Indian, white, Muslim, Christian. Now, if the Premier of this province and his party is not going to stand up and actually defend the rights of people to protest and go further by when a woman in the provincial government was wearing a kufiya, that one of his MECs said, you cannot wear that kufiya here. Now, that is the kind of division that this province doesn't need. And as long as this DA looks at the beneficiaries of apartheid and colonialism, doesn't deal with the land issue, doesn't deal with the indigenous people issue, we are not going to be able to unite this province. And our argument as the ANC is that we've made incredible gains, but also made big mistakes. But the national vision, incorporated with the provincial vision, can make this province a better place. We cannot get into a war and a battle. If the young men who've been killed in Hanover Park at the level they were from Constantia or Bishop's Court, there would have been a Western Cape emergency declared. But the reality is those lives don't mean as much to the DA government. And that's what policing needs community involvement. They undermine community police. It needs to give young people hope, but it also needs hard action. Right now, across the road, where the judge spent a lot of his time, 3 of the high flyers, Liffman, Donkey, Boyson, and also Modak, they are in court now. They are being charged by this government, and that is also what is necessary. But this DA government gives contracts in the city of Cape Town to family members of known gangsters. That's the rot that we are dealing with in the Western Cape, and we must deal with it. Mabahambe, DA.
Thank you, Cameron. Faisal, I'm going to come to you shortly. I just want to, I know there's a question from the floor. Before we get there, I do need to ask each of the panelists, because this is an incredibly divisive topic, the issue of the genocide that's been perpetrated in Palestine right now. I want to start at the other end with Fadil. I'd like each of the representatives of the political parties here. You have 1 minute. I will cut you off at 1 minute. You have 1 minute. What is your party's stance on the Palestine situation? Do you support genocide or not? Fadil, 1 minute.
As survivors of genocide, it is unthinkable that we support it. We understand the democratic Alliance's stance on the Israel issue. They are funded by these Israelis. We understand that during apartheid, the apartheid state of Israel stood shoulder to shoulder with the apartheid state of South Africa, of which Mr. Wendy is a beneficiary. We understand the connection. We understand the sympathy. As people of color, we reject with contempt the notion of a two-state solution. One Palestine where all those European foreigners can come and klop aan for visas. They must go home. Let me quote Kayton McKenzie, Ama Hambe Israel.
Thank you. 45 seconds. Well done. Let's go to...
Can I use his extra 15 seconds?
Unfortunately not, sir. They're non-transferable like your mobile data at the end of the month.
So the Allied Movement for Change, and all of us involved, and many of us sitting on this side of the debate, understand that we are all against Zionism. But I want to go into the construct of Zionism in this 1 minute. And that is that Zionism cannot be localized to an international phenomenon. Zionism has its tentacles right here in the form of the DA that has taken a corporate approach and looked to Zionism. The people that is sitting there right now in the blue is the same apartheid government that you had in the past. It is the same Zionist mentality that continues to permeate right into our schools. The premier, the outgoing premier, Alan Winde, said that he is not building hospitals in Constantia. Let me tell you why. Because the best hospitals has been already built for the people in Constantia. The hospitals that he's building everywhere else is made of half bricks and rubbish that they are throwing inside there. They're giving our people nonsense while they're taking the best for themselves, and that is part of Zionism.
Thank you, Faisal. Let's move on to Brett.
Thanks, Lance. We support justice and sovereignty for the people of Palestine. We have done so since long before the 7th of October. We congratulate the South African government on the ICJ application and the interim order that they obtained. In fact, we asked the Minister of Durko about using the Genocide Convention in November last year already. And so we are firmly and have always been in support of the people of Palestine, and we reject the genocide and reject the occupation of Palestinian land. Thank you.
Thank you. Akolile.
Thank you very much. Rise Mzansi supports the freedom of Palestinians, and we have continued to call for a ceasefire and an ease in terms of humanitarian support. And we continue to support and supported the ICJ case in the South African government took. And we call on many other international bodies to make sure that they do all they can to push for a ceasefire, to push to make sure that there is humanitarian support in Palestine, and particularly the United Nations to do its job in making sure that that happens.
Thank you, Akolile. Angela Selby.
Action SA condemns the violence against innocent men, women, and children caught in the middle of...
The genocide, say genocide. Why not say genocide? Use the word.
Thank you. Can we let the representative conclude
There are
the point,
innocent
please?
men, women, and children that get caught in the crossfire of violence. There are South Africans that have got relatives in Palestine and in Israel. And Action SA stands on the side of humanity on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dugmore.
Thanks very much, Lance. For a long time, back to the time of the close alliance between the ANC and the PLO, between our former president, Yasser Arafat, we have a long history of support. In fact, it was the NCC, I think, who reminded us of the quote by Nelson Mandela, that until the Palestinian people are free, we can never enjoy freedom. What is going on is a genocide. There's absolutely no question about that. And we must condemn that genocide. The 6th pillar of our manifesto talks about a better world. And we need to make sure that as South Africans, let's remember those that supported us when we were under apartheid colonialism. Other countries supported us for some people to imply, like I find the PA often does, and I was worried that the NCC was getting close to that, that doesn't, it's not our concern. We cannot, as South Africans, cut ourselves off from what's happening in the world. That's a proud
Cameron,
tradition.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you there. Thank you very much. Yes, MK Party.
Okay. The MK Party rejects any organization that supports the genocide in Palestine, because it is the same thing that is happening in South Africa. It is economically, it is socially, culturally, and otherwise. So we appeal to our people in the Western Cape and in South Africa to reject any party that is supported by the Zionists, any party that is supported by the genocide in Gaza. And we are saying that even in the Western Cape, people must make sure that they unite under the banner of MK and any progressive party to take out, to do away with the apartheid, to do away with the DA, and also and their maintenance of geographic apartheid and their economic apartheid that is happening in this province. Amandla.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Sankara. We go to Fairuz.
Thank you so much. Look, we know that there's more than just the boys in blue that receive Zionist funding from members of the podium that we see today. They receive Zionist funding, and we can take a look at their manifestos and we can question that and see, I know why you're saying certain things and I know why you're not. From Al Jamaah's perspective, we made no secret about who we support and why we support it, and we condemn genocide. But not only that, we are saying our people need to take the narrative, take control of the narrative. We do not recognize any state of Israel. We recognize an Israeli occupation force. And we say that why should we have an occupation force at the head of a table dictating the rights of Palestinian people and the Palestinian state? We need colonization to end, not just in Palestine, but in South Africa as well. And we can only do that if we take control of the narrative and stand together as people, see beyond the lies. And that is what Al Jamaah is about. We will dispel the lies and we'll stand against it. Down to all occupation forces and down to genocide.
Thank you, Fairuz. Lumka.
Thanks, Lance. Boss's stance, we condemn genocide unequivocally. We condemn it. That's what we should know. We view it as the most heinous. In Palestine, are you happy? Great. It is the most heinous crimes against humanity. We do not support it. Everybody knows we do not support genocide. It is the most heinous crimes against humanity. So our stance, like I was asked by Lance, our stance includes accountability, holding perpetrators to account. We support that, right? We also believe in prevention. Prevention meaning early intervention and preventative measures to make sure that genocide does not happen. And then lastly, what we do believe in is justice and reconciliation. We promote efforts of justice.
Thank you. That's your minute. That's your minute. It's very difficult to think that you support anything else, Nazir. Over to you. What is the EFF's stance?
Thank you very much, Lance. Lance, since the outset on the 26th of July 2013, the EFF advocated for the dismantling of the apartheid Israeli state and the return of all Palestinian lands. And we are the only party that kept true to our word. On the 21st of November 2023, a draft resolution sponsored by the EFF was adopted by Parliament to expel the Israeli ambassador from South Africa. The DA voted against the motion, the IFP voted against the motion, and I'm sure if Action SA and Bosa was there, they would have voted against the motion. Our comrades from the ANC, and the ANC, for 30 years, has allowed an apartheid Israeli embassy to exist on South African soil. It's a disgrace. The ANC are hypocrites. We are still waiting for the president of the ANC to implement the draft resolution that was adopted by Parliament to expel the Israeli ambassador. I think the ANC is playing for time because the ICJ case will not be concluded for a very long time.
Thank you, Nazir. That is your minute. Actually, that's your minute plus 2 seconds. So, Sammy.
Free Palestine. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. The PMC, yes, I'm going to explain it. Let me stand up. I was headhunted by Helen Ziller to work for the DAS there, National Elections Campaign Consultant. I've done it for the year. I was highly paid and looked after. But when the DA instructed its senior leadership not to speak out about the genocide in Palestine, and when they fired Katalia, 2 weeks after that, I took a conscious political decision because I stand with the people of Palestine. I resigned with immediate effect at the media conference, and I stand with I took a sacrifice. I'm still unemployed, working for Marius without a pay.
Thank you, Sammy.
We stand with Palestine.
Thank you.
It is a genocide.
That is
and
your,
the reason
that is
why
your time,
Action
Sammy.
SA
Thank
don't
you.
want to speak out.
Thank you. We
because
need,
they're
to
also
move to,
getting
we
funded.
need to move to Neil de Beer. Thank you. Neil, what is the UIM stance on Palestine?
I want to say to the room, I stood with blooded boots in genocide. I don't think many here have. Genocide is not a political issue. It is a massive failure of humanity. When you stand next to a child that has been bombed to pieces, no human being can go to bed and ever in your life sleep well. Mandela, which I worked with, when, just a minute, can I have my minute? When he spoke of that nation, Madiba never spoke of Palestine without massive emotion. There was a reason. They say if you want peace, you've got to go to war. But then afterward, peace must come. Genocide that's happening today can never be acceptable to anybody that is a human.
Thank you,
and
Neil.
that's my
Thank you.
opinion.
Thank you, Neil. Let's move over to the IFP. What is the IFP's official stance on the Palestine issue?
Thank you very much, Lance. The IFP has been very consistent in its messaging. We are neither pro-Israel or pro-Palestine. We are pro-peace. Peace. We are against genocide. We are against genocide in whatever form it may take. And we call for the government not to expel Israeli diplomats, but to bring people back to the floor to discuss a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Eh? That would be the IFP's position. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Can I ask that we allow the representatives to please say their piece? We have given them each a minute to present their party's case. You are welcome to show your dissatisfaction at the polls on May 29th and in the follow-up questions that we'll allow from the floor as soon as we've concluded. But please, Mr. Windy is the last panelist.
Son of a colonizer.
Thank you very much.
Son of a colonizer.
Thank you very much, Lance. I want to say again, and I've said it on all of the platforms, that I'm deeply concerned about the killing of innocent citizens in Palestine.
You're joking. You're joking.
Thank
yes,
you.
I can talk.
Thank you.
I will tell you about this colonizer. Let me talk. You see, this man lives in luxury. This is the same man you got rid of Wesley Newman.
I'm sorry,
you spent millions.
Sir, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to ask you to sit down. We have invited the panelists to speak. Please, let's allow Mr. Windy to make his point. And then, no, he does not want to give his speaking time away. Mr. Windy, please continue.
Thank you very much, Lance. So I'm deeply concerned, and I've said it on State of the Province addresses, all of these platforms, about the killing of innocent children, innocent citizens in Palestine. I also, and my party believes absolutely in the two-state solution, and we need peace. But what I also want to do is, I've listened to this panel, and specifically two political parties saying Zionist tentacles deep in the DA. And I sincerely hope that journalists are going to be looking for truth. I really would like to see the backup behind making those statements. Because of course you can't make statements like that are not true. And then perhaps one other item that I've heard the Honourable Doug Moore a number of times talking about, and he says an MEC in the province. Now he's actually talking about something that happened in one of our standing committees a few years ago, still under the previous speaker. And it was someone arrived at a committee, and we have got rules that say, you know, no party regalia or regalia inside these spaces. And that was the question that was asked. And of course, the speaker ruled against it.
Mr. Windy,
he comes here with
your
nonsense.
That is your minute. And yes, IOL's journalists will certainly investigate that. We'll take some questions from the floor. Sorry, there was one question here. Professor Chitka, I'll come to you next. First, this gentleman in the black jacket. Yep.
Want to. Meneer Allen Windy, ik zal me schamen als ik weer daar zo staan. Die Weskaap het die meeste plaasuitsettings. En die plaasuitsettings is ons breinmense en ons breinkennis. Die DA, sowel as die ANC, is beide sleg as het kom by die kwessies van ons mense. En dan is die van die ander panelists wat nooit daar is wanneer ons mense uitgesit word nie. En nooit gaan support gee nie. Die justice system moet gekyk word na. Julle stuur elke jaar klompe geld terug na treasury toe van die housing budget. Hoekom bou julle nie huise vir ons mense nie? In Drakensberg het ons Waldewie, een van die rykste developments in die hele wêreld. 10 kilometer daarvandaan, daar was daar 50 mense wat een commune toilet moet gebruik. Swak diens van julle. So is absoluut patheties. Jy het mooi gepraat van julle bou nie skole in Constantia of hospitale in Constantia nie, maar julle bou dit in ons areas, maak wiekery kontrakte. Is mense wat julle skuif elke keer die goalposts, GB's 9, GB 12, GB whatever. Sodra as mense daar kom, word ons een kan geskuif. Is tyd dat julle gat in rad kry en fokus op ons mense, because dis ons mense se geld en ons mense se plek. Die ander storie wat julle ook doen is die 1913 Land Act, die ANC, julle moet julle ding reg kry, because why daai is ons mense se grond, dis ons mense se plek. Is tyd dat julle moet begin te reg fokus op die kwessies van ons mense. En die PMC is clear op die volgende. Die feit van die mette, die WKOD het kontrak onderwysers wat by breinskole skool hou, se kontrakte gestop. Wat gaan julle doen rondom daai ding? Want julle wil hê die breinkind moet op die straat lê en nog 'n sosiale challenge raak. Julle het hierdie province vir die afgelope 10 jaar tyd dat julle gatte regryk en fokus op die kwessies. 15 jaar van 15 jaar van verdrukking.
Thank you, sir. I did not hear a question in there. We've got a question from Professor
I did have a
Chitka.
question. Why did they do hoekom doen hulle niks rondom plaasuitsettings nie? Die Weskaap het die meeste plaasuitsettings en wat is hulle stand rondom dit?
Evictions from farmlands, and then we'll go to Professor Chitka. Mr. Windy?
So I think the word that he mentioned was the criminal justice system. And, you know, that's the courts. And we do not have any control over the courts in our province. And the whole criminal justice system, and of course I don't want to take over the courts. I don't think that should be regionalized as the criminal justice system. I think that is a central system, but SAPs and policing, absolutely. I believe it should be devolved, and we should be making policing decisions closer to where citizens feel the crime, because that is the major problem and why crime is so crazily out of control in our country. They don't have the ability to fight crime correctly. We should have 28,000 police officers in this province. We've got 17,500, so we are totally under-resourced. And of course, that brings together, whether it's land invasions, whether it is murder, whether it is gangsterism and crime. And that's why we put the safety plan in place, because we have to make sure that we delete that. And if you want to bring that detail to me, I'm happy. Bring it to me, we'll give you an answer.
Thank you. The outgoing MEC says that he doesn't want to be in court, but we want him to be in court for complicity in genocide, right? And I'll tell you why. He hasn't expressed himself on the recruitment of mercenaries in South Africa, where his kith and kin and political party aid and abet that. He's silent on that. He hasn't. He speaks about a two-state solution, but he's failed to condemn the illegal settlements and the pogroms in the thousands that are taking place. He cannot have it both ways. He is also, his law enforcement undermines our freedom of speech and criminalizes our constitutional rights by blocking us from protesting at New Year and at every other place, at Newlands and every other place. It's not SAPS, it's his law enforcement party. Why doesn't he come out unequivocally against genocide, against settlement, against apartheid? And on apartheid, how on earth can he make the claim that that inequality has reduced a party that is against the taxation of the rich and want to abolish the minimum wage? What more can you do to increase and heighten inequality in South Africa? Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Alan?
So,
I do want to just say...
first of all, it is absolutely incorrect, because in actual fact, at the turning of the Christmas lights, it was actually the mayor, Jordan Hill-Lewis, who went to the SAPS commander and said, let the people alone with their flags. It was...
You are a liar. I'm saying you are a liar.
Sir, please, allow him to speak.
And then the second thing about his kin. You know, I've been watching the misinformation, and the interesting one for me has always been Wendy's cousin's son is fighting in Israel for the Israelis. Now, I've got 4 cousins. 3 of them have only got daughters, and my 4th cousin does have a son, and he's still in primary school.
Thank you. We do need to come to that side, but I've got one question over here from this lady. I will give you a chance soon, sir. This woman had her hand up before you did. A question, please, yeah?
Yeah, it is a question.
Please.
The elephant in the room. Nobody's going to use the Aboriginal Khoi and San peoples as political fodder, other than the AM4C has been very consistent when it speaks to the rights of the First Nation peoples. Every beneficiary of a settler in this country should be referred to as a backyard dweller. AM4C, my question to you is, what is your view on the housing issue in the Western Cape?
Thank you. Faisal side? Oh, can we get a mic to Faisal, please?
So with regards to housing, we'll obviously move to where the Democratic Alliance or the Democratic Apartheid Party, the DA, has moved to, sorry, they've just been renamed, to Democratic Apartheid. And I just want to again state, Mr. Windy, that it was you referring to the fact that the tentacles of Zionism, it's not the tentacles, you are Zionism itself. It's not the tentacles. But let's just go forward from there in saying that the move that should be made is that in municipalities, land must be given to families and redistributed to families where they can thrive on in a proportionate manner, in a way that they are able to receive that land as families, be that families that are with one child or a mother or a father with one child. And so it's to redistribute that land at no cost to them and then to start. There's enough land in this country, but in the end of the day, it's all sitting in their hands. So the wealth of the country is laying in a few people's hands. And this is the social engineering we're talking about. So the Allied Movement for Change is going to move against social engineering.
Thank you. We've got a question on the far right there. Woman in the red beret and the black polo neck.
Hello, everybody. I'm a cannabis activist that represents civil society. I love that everybody's talking about the redistribution of land in the Western Cape. I grew up in Woodstock. I focus on urban area development. I want to know from you representatives, what are you focusing in terms of black women empowerment, youth inclusion? I feel like I'm also probably one of the few youths asking questions in this room. So I want to know, what are you focusing on in those areas in the Western Cape, and also how creatively outside of housing solutions, if we're talking about agricultural forwardness, are you thinking in implementing into civil society and the inclusion, and what women are you putting in place? Anti-Action SA, you should be ashamed of yourself for standing here as a woman of color, talking about yourself as a mother, okay? And then I also want to ask the EFF, what are your plans for land and the implementation in the Western Cape? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the youth question, I want to start with our younger candidates, if possible. Akolile, would you like to respond to that first?
Thank you. Thank you very much. As the youngest of the premier candidates in the Western Cape, and someone that serves in the National Leadership Collective of Rise Mzansi, I believe that young people must be at the table in terms of leadership, in terms of solutions. We have decided for Rise Mzansi that we're not going to have a youth league where young people are going to discuss their own issues there. We're not going to have a women's league where women are going to discuss their own issues there. We will have women, we will have young people in leadership position and at the National Leadership Collective. Hence, as the youngest premier candidate here in the Western Cape, we have 2 women that are premier candidates in Gauteng and in KZN. Young people need to be brought into the political leadership at all spaces. And I want to talk against this issue that young people are apathetic. Young people are apathetic when it comes to party politics. Young people are organized in many spaces across our society. And we need to make sure that those young people are supported in the spaces in which they organize and that they occupy spaces in parliament and in the provincial legislatures so that they can be part of the solutions that need them and that they deserve to be part of.
Thank you. I want to come to Lumka before we go to Nazir to speak on the land question at the EFF, because I think it does form a critical part of the EFF's manifesto as well. Lumka?
So my BOSA stance on women leadership, we've got a deputy leader named Nobuntu Hlazo Webster. So we firmly believe in women leadership. I am the premier candidate for the Western Cape for BOSA. So we definitely believe that women should be in positions of leadership, whether it's in business, governance, or civil society. What we also do is, encourage this by empowering and funding women empowerment programs, initiatives to develop, for women to develop specifically leadership skills, because when we know that when women lead, nations are born, and this is what we want to cultivate in our society. Thank you.
Thank you. Nazir, on the EFF and the land question.
Thank you very much, Lance. Before I get to the land question, I just want to correct Akolile. He's 35 years old. He's the #1 candidate for his party. Aisha Kasim, who sits there in the audience, is the #1 candidate for the EFF here in the Western Cape. She's 31 years old, and she's been a member of the provincial legislature.
Is she the premier candidate? I
so
said premier candidate. I said I'm the youngest premier candidate.
Yeah.
Is she the premier candidate?
That is not the question.
I said I'm the youngest premier candidate.
Lance,
You see, you can't ask straight questions of any of the politicians.
So,
they don't even answer to each other.
No. Lance, I wanna entertain the issue about the premier candidate, but not now. That's not the question.
No, sure. Please answer the question about land.
I'm dodging it. So anyway, Lance, so about land, we are going to expropriate land for equal distribution in use. So we will ensure that everyone in the Western Cape has access to land, including women and youth. Whether it's for industry or agriculture, we will ensure that everyone is allowed to access land. It will never happen under the ANC, and it will certainly not happen under the DA. So only the EFF of the 3 major parties is the one that will ensure that we effect land revolution here in the Western Cape, ensuring African and colored people can access land for their purposes.
Thank you. I want to come to Angela. Would you like an opportunity to respond to the question or the comment from the audience?
Which question was that?
Not the question. Just the
It was
comment.
a statement. It wasn't a question.
All right. No, thank you. Fairuz, sorry, Cameron, Fairuz did ask me first. Fairuz?
Yeah, thank you so much. Look, for Al Jamaa, we are 50% women represented, and the fact that I'm here today as a woman should speak volumes in itself. Our #6 national candidate is also a youth member. So we are serious about transformation on that level. When I look at the issue of land and empowering women, we have a factory that we have opened in the Eastern Cape that looks at, so we look at what beneficiation actually is. How do you create employment and how do we empower young people? So we have a peanut factory that has been opened by a largely female-run or a female-run association, and they are, through beneficiation, they are accessing peanuts grown locally, and they are creating employment not just for themselves but for the communities as well. So that is in action. That is putting the theory in action. And I'd like to see what other political party has actually done that goes beyond mere rhetoric. So we need to see action in our country, and Al Jamaa has shown that we have delivered on that, and we intend to make it grow. That is just the beginning. We also look at the Philippi horticultural area where we have potential. We see potential in that, and we know that it's been under attack by those who are currently governing both the province, and we don't see much help around that. We know that a family of 4 or 3.5 people can, on 120 rand, live off vegetables that we get from the Philippi horticultural area. So why are we not seeing more of our land being used for agriculture like that? We are seeing the benefits to our poor people. And that is the potential that Al Jamaa would like to unleash for our people.
Thank you, Fairuz. Cameron and then Neil. Which one? On land? On land.
Okay.
All right. We're giving the parties an opportunity. Cameron was next, and then Neil.
Thank you, Lance. Just getting on before the land issue, I think it's important to note that, as one of the colleagues has said here, Zionism is an ideology, and it plays itself out not only in Palestine, but it plays itself over the world. But we must also admit, as South Africans, there are many Jewish South Africans who've made it very clear that they are not Zionists and that they say not in our name. And that's the non-racial character. Now, when it comes to land, I must say, you know, we never know what the EFF's position actually is, because we hear Nazir today, but then you hear their commander-in-chief talking to people the other day and saying, no, we're not going to nationalize all the land. No, we're not going to nationalize all your... We just want a state-owned company. We're not going to nationalize you. And then Floyd Shivambu gets irritated because the commander-in-chief is going against them. If you look at their policy, they want all land, every single piece of land to be held by the state. But then why does their commander-in-chief, when he's speaking to business people, say something else? And that's why the EFF is not credible. There are 3 things in regard to land. The first is that, and we have law about security of tenure. And our problem is that many of the farmers, not all, but many of the farmers, particularly those that support the DA, try and undermine the extension of Security of Tenure Act and actually support evictions. The second issue is the restitution. And in our country, there's been serious progress in regard to restitution of people who lost land. The problem has been many people went for the monetary compensation, and I think we need to do much more. Then the third issue relates to land redistribution. And if you look at the record, over 30 years, the government, in terms of land redistribution, has achieved a lot, but it is not enough in terms of the original sin. In this province, and I want to mention a fact, that when it comes to ownership of urban land, and we know the demographics of this province, around 42% so-called colored, 39-40% African, and 17% white. Do you know that when it comes to urban land, the white population owns over 70% of urban land, the colored population owns 10%, and the African population 3%. That's urban land. So land redistribution is critical. What we are saying is the Expropriation Act, which the DA and other right-wing parties are opposing, is going to allow the expropriation of land at nil compensation. Hold on. At nil compensation. No, he's interrupting me now, Chair.
Yeah.
At nil compensation in particular circumstances. We've got a constitution in this country. We've got a legislative framework, so the way that expropriation is going to happen will happen according to a legal framework. And the populist politics of the EFF, who want to promise that all land will simply resort to the state, is not. There's community trusts, there's state land, there's privately held land. So that solution is simply misleading people, whereas the ANC's policy of protecting security of tenure, the restitution, which must still continue, and we must review the date. Someone said, yeah, we must review that date. And lastly, the issue of land redistribution now becomes more possible because the expropriation bill says it's not just expropriation for a school, but it's expropriation for the purposes of land redistribution. Who is supporting that? The ANC. Who is opposing that? The DA, the Freedom Front, and all those so-called moonshot pact, who actually don't belong here, but on the moon, because they don't understand the realities here.
Thank you. Thank you, Cameron. Neil, you have an opportunity to respond. Sammy wants to respond as well, and then Sankara, and then we'll come to Anthony. So, Neil, over to you, and then, of course, Alan Windy as well. I do want to bring up, you raised Moonshot Pact, Cameron. I see your hand, Brett. You raised the Moonshot Pact. I do want to come to coalitions, but a little bit later on. Neil.
I'm not going to take that long. Inshallah. I'm so happy that the UIM don't count the women in our party. We make the women count in our party. Because women are the rock. So we don't count quota. Ons maak hom oop as die vrouens hom wil vat hom. Because it is time that they have that voice. Right? Moonshot se ma. Then secondly, I think a program director, we've got to understand that in the past, owning land was favorable. It was absolutely favorable. But what has happened in the modern economic process, Comrade Mamela, is it is what you do on top of the land. The problem with poverty is that it doesn't create asset wealth. We are fighting for turnover of just a job. We must give people asset wealth. We have to make sure that when we give land to people, that they can do something with the land. You cannot just sit there, shlalapanzi, and say, I have land. So land must be distributed, but what I would like to see is if we could create an economic stability by helping those that own the land to also work the land. And if those two can be found, we will have a sound economic principle. On the EFF matter, sorry, I must get it in, if we nationalize, it means everything goes back to state ownership again, not to private ownership where it should be. Title deed is number one, and we need to get to that position. And by the way, when you go to Umtata, there's 145,000 hectares of open available land. There's the Umzimvubu River. So jy het land en jy het water. Get that? Yeah, sure. Go take it, distribute it. Ons Sabenza. Sure, being an ex-MK veteran, I look upon you, MK, to understand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll go to Sankara, and Angela also wants to say something. Sorry, Sammy first, and then Sankara. Representatives? Sorry, no. Sammy was next after Neil, and then you, sir. If I can just ask the representatives, we are running tight on time. If we can keep our responses nice and quick, please. But you gave Neil so much time. Everybody had time, but now, and you had your opportunity as well. But he took nonsense and he gave me a lot of time. Sammy, please speak over the honourable member.
You see, this is the problem in Parliament. For the last 5 years, we've seen this in Parliament.
Sammy, I'm going to start timing
now. The PMC is very clear that we've got a constitutional problem in terms of the law that places a limitation to claiming land. Now, you can only claim land up until 1930. Now, as the PMC, we say that we want to reopen the 1913 Land Act and take it back to 1652. When Jan van Riebeeck toe hy gekom het, dis waar ons probleem met land en grond begin het. When you go to the Northern Cape, you see in Concordia there's a big problem in terms of land. Because in the Northern Cape you've got land that is rich in minerals, but the local people don't benefit from that land. And so as a PMC, we will open up and we will amend the Constitution to make sure that the First Nation people get their land back in terms of going back to 1652. So that is our position on land. In terms of youth, the PMC, ons het die jongste parlementaire kandidaat van alle partye in die land. Hy is 20 jaar oud. Mohammed Boltman van Bahalapak. He's the youngest candidate on the list because the PMC believe in opportunity. So we will provide and open up access to young people to take up space in the economy because they've been affected by the socio-economic conditions in our communities. So we need to empower them and to provide opportunities.
I'm going to have to cut you there. We go to Sankara, then Angela, and then Anthony.
Okay, thank you. I want first to comment I want first to comment to what the ANC representative here was saying. There's this fascination about the legal framework when we're talking about the land in this country. And then the attempt to try to dwarf people and make them appear as if they are dreaming. South Africa is worth any experiment economically. So we must first start with the constitution. The constitution was well marketed, but it never came to the people so that they can have a say on it. There was no consultative process, but it was marketed overseas as the best constitution. Why? Because there was this frustration or the anxiety by the West, especially in the wake of the fall of the Berlin Wall, that, hey, we are afraid that these African countries will go socialist and all of that. So they tried, by all means, to have moderate approach when it comes to the economy of the country. So if we first start with the constitution, we do our way making sure it is democratic, because right now it is valorizing and privileging private land ownership. So if you don't crack there constitutionally, because you can't say that the legal framework needs to be considered, so to speak. So this is our intervention as the MK. Start with the constitution so that you can make sure that you unlock the political imagination of this country. That will make sure that the state is capacitated. We can't be like Zimbabwe and say that we give people land without any plan. We make sure that there's research, there's a financialization of the land redistribution. So that is our mandate. And the people, it's a people's mandate through the MK.
Thank you, Sankara. Sankara, thank you. I'm going to have to cut you there. Angela, it's over to you. 1 minute.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on the issue of youth and women representation. Action SA has a depth of leadership, and youth and women are represented at all levels, including the top level of the party. Well, go and take a look if you don't think so. With regards to land in South Africa, we've had the Land Claims Commission that was established years ago. That has failed. There are applicants that have applied for restitution that have passed on, whose families have still not benefited. As when you look at the issue of homelessness in the Western Cape, you have so many derelict and vacant buildings and industrial areas that can be used for skills development and entrepreneurial training and small business development. But when it comes to those derelict buildings, Action SA, under our president as the former mayor of Johannesburg, went and reclaimed derelict and vacant buildings and converted them for student accommodation, and is also seeking to do the same with abandoned and derelict buildings in converting them for industrial areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Anthony. Anthony and then Brett.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nazir.
Thank you very much, Lance. Firstly, as the IFP, we would like to salute and honor all of the women in our society. You are the matriarchs, and we thank you for that. And that is highly representative in our party. The Deputy Chair of the Multi-Party Women's Caucus, Honorable Marsh Langwa, a mother to us all in Parliament. Honorable the Deputy Chief Whip, Zandile Majosi. We have Princess Angela Buthelezi. We have the Honorable Liesl van der Merwe. So we have a depth of women. We honor our women, and we are engaged in projects with our women in the rural areas in terms of regenerative farming. The lady over there mentioned the issue of cannabis. The IFP brought cannabis to the table. The 2014 Medical Innovation Bill by the late former Mario Ambrosini, talked about cannabis. It talked about the commercialization of hemp. The ANC didn't bring the commercialization of hemp, okay? That is a massive failure. We asked about centers for research and medical innovation in that bill. Where are they? That would bring traditional cures to the ills of the people of South Africa and things that wouldn't cost a fortune. If I move quickly to the land question, the Honorable Dugmore is wrong. And he says the IFP stood against expropriation without compensation. We didn't. He doesn't understand the law. We stood against expropriation. We said the Constitution is sufficient in itself to allow for expropriation with almost nil compensation in a sui generis, which is a kind of, in a basket of options, case, depending on a case. And each case for expropriation should be judged on its own merits by a competent court. That's what we said. We all are under the rule of law and the Constitution. So that's where we are on that. I'd just like to correct that. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Brett?
Yeah, thanks, Lance. I mean, there was a question here about farm evictions, and I don't think we can talk about farm evictions without, first of all, talking about land reform, which must be for black economic empowerment, to address poverty, to address socioeconomic challenges, to give people the opportunity to farm if they want to be farmers, so they need access to land. And in the urban context, we need land for housing and other socioeconomic opportunities. So we must address the original sin, as I said right in the beginning, and that is the failure to provide access to land and to redress the dispossession of land and the Forced Removals and Group Areas Act. But I think also what we need to do when we talk about farm evictions is talk about the province's failure to deliver housing. And we are glibly going over the housing question, a 600,000 backlog with a province that only delivered 5,000 houses in the last financial year, when their target was only 8,000. They were one of the worst performing provinces in the country. And for this financial year, their target is only 4,000 houses, when there is a 600,000 backlog. So this province is fundamentally failing in delivering housing solutions. And that will never change for as long as the DA believes that well-located land over-subsidizes the poor, which is exactly what the former Premier said, with the current Premier sitting next to her nodding his head, that using public land that is well-located would over-subsidize the poor. And that will tell you everything about the Democratic Alliance's attitude to land reform. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Windy, your response to the land question and women representation and youth representation in the DA?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank
Yes.
You. Okay, so first of all, on the land issue, I mean, there are a number of questions and a number of issues. I want to go to the first one about families. You raised a very clear question about families and homes. So there is a program, it's called First Home Finance Program. And of course, that's a countrywide program, nationally funded. And the interesting thing is that between 2019 and 2024, this term, we've delivered 6,100 family home opportunities through this program, and that makes up 60% of all of this program delivered within the country. So this province, 60% of the whole country's delivery. I've already said 46,000 units delivered in the last 5 years.
Only 5,000 last year.
And of course, the Honourable Heron only selectively chooses components within the various
and
issues
the worst performing province on informal settlement upgrade.
Brett, I'm sorry.
Those are the stats.
Alan didn't interrupt you.
But we haven't dealt with the stats. We keep talking.
I'm actually looking forward to the Honourable Heron and showing me the delivery in Tiava's Kloof.
I would like to.
They're very good at claiming lands like Knoflokskraal, but not delivering any
We
absolute.
cannot have a debate where numbers are thrown out without context. And this province is the worst performing province when it comes to upgrade of informal settlements. It is one of the worst performing provinces when it comes to delivering top structures, actual housing.
Brett,
I'm sorry you didn't deal with the jobs question, where they are misleading South Africans around how many jobs they create.
I'm going to have to stop you there, sir. Alan, please continue.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so getting back to land, then there are obviously two components. There's in the city and metro land, and then of course there's rural land. So let's first of all talk about the real tracts of land here in the city. and the Honourable Dugmore talking about it as well. And quite frankly, if the ANC was serious about it, they would have already transferred over Wingfield, Youngsfield, and of course the biggest piece of land that should be developed and has been promised election after election is District 6. And that piece of land needs to be an opportunity
But the
for
city
people
must,
to...
the city must provide the
This is
servitude.
totally unacceptable, Mr. Heron.
The city must provide the servitude.
Brett, please.
So then let's look at rural land as well, and of course that's quite critical, agricultural land and rural land. And there's a measurement that gets done every single year through which provinces have their competency, because land and land reform sits within the national department. The ANC's policy is not to give land ownership, because what they do is their policy is to give a lease on those pieces of agricultural land. They don't even get that right. We have people spending years without even getting the lease. When you don't get a lease, you can't get a bank account, you can't get a water connection, you can't get any real opportunity on those pieces of land. But where we actually fund from provincial funding to help these farms, in the last stats, it was 82% success rate of those agricultural pieces of land, those farmers who've had access to that land, and 10% is the national production. And then, of course, the most important thing around this rural land is to enable these people who want to become farmers. Heron said we must enable it. Absolutely, we must enable it, and that's what that money is for. And we've shown in this province that it works. And we've gone from 15 years ago, 1% of farmland which was now being farmed by new farmers who wanted to farm it, and it is now just below 10% in our province. And then last of all, on the youth, there was a big issue about youth, and one of our biggest problems in our country is youth unemployment, right? The highest youth unemployment rate in the world. So what are we doing in this province? Well, within this national framework, I've already said we're 12 percentage points off better if you're a young person in this province to any other part of South Africa. You've got a much better opportunity of getting a job here in this province. And the Honourable Heron can go and have a look at it again. He can go and check out Africa Check, who's asked me to check it. It is 78.9% net new jobs in South Africa coming out of the Western Cape.
Thank you, Mr. Wendy. I have given you an opportunity this round to answer a question, particularly around the women leadership. There's a gentleman in the green cap that has had his hand up. I want to come to the member over here. I want to go to Judge Desai, and then I'll go to the lady in the spectacles, and then the lady in the red spectacles as well. Can we? I do apologize. Sorry. Hold on. Can we? I will come back to you now, sir. I need to state we are running short on time. I ask you direct one question to one panelist and do so in a minute.
Okay, my question is with Cameron. What is your position on the just transition as the ANC? Because Gwede Mandasha speaks this and other comrades of yours speak this other thing. Others are in the pocket of capital. What is your view on the ecological crisis that is going to kill all of us if we don't solve it?
Thank you.
Where does it get its facts?
Thank you, sir. That is your question. Mr. Dugmore, a response to that quickly, please. No, right now. And you have 1 minute.
Thank you very much. We have a policy around the energy mix, right? It includes coal, it includes nuclear, it includes renewables, including the issue of solar and wind. The just transition is not going to be forced upon us in terms of its timing by any global organization. We've got coal reserves, and we are not going to be told that the just transition must happen in 5 years. We're going to use all of those, and in talking with our workers, talking with Eskom and the different, work out that once we are able to build a regular supply of renewables, we're doing 2 small nuclear reactors. So we have an energy mix. The just transition we support, it's got to be negotiated and consulted with workers so that we reach that. But we're not going to be dictated to in terms of
Thank
how
you, Cameron.
long
Thank
that
you.
just
That's your
transition
minute.
must take.
We've got a question over here quickly. Rapid fire, quick question, 1 minute answer, one question, one panelist. Go, sir.
Thank you so much, Lance. Okay, I'm going to go. This question is directed to both the DA and the ANC. What is the actual human settlements plan and budget for the Western Cape to firstly eradicate spatial injustice, to tackle seasonal disasters within our informal settlements? Giving sandbags and dakplate is not a very human settlements plan. And then another thing is, I just want to emphasize on what this gentleman was saying.
One
the
question.
Cape Islands have over 2,000 pending court cases
One question.
of illegal.
Thank you, sir. Thank
I was
you.
waiting so long.
I know.
I was
One
waiting extremely long.
You are more
30
than
years,
welcome.
30 years and 15
One
years.
question,
we're
one
talking too
answer.
long.
One question, one answer. So those questions were posed to?
All right. It's clear, as Brett Heron and others have outlined, is that the DA is building fewer houses every year than when the ANC governed this province. That is a fact, and they have not upgraded informal settlements. So what we are saying, we need a land audit of all municipal land, not to hide it away. Stop selling municipal land. Provincial land like Tafelberg is there, but for 15 years they've blocked it. We support inner city housing. We support the issue of making sure that social housing agencies such as the HDA and others. One crisis we have at the moment, which the DA isn't helping with Prasa, it's about land as well. The only lines that are not working now is Nyanga, Mitchell's Plain, Nyanga, Kailicha. We have to find a solution with land, and the DA is blocking, so that's why commuters are suffering, because they sell land or they actually do not use it for social housing. We say land audit. We say increase the number of houses built every year with the budget that we have, upgrade informal settlements, and make sure that we provide the services across all parts of the city.
Thank you, Cameron. The question was also posed to Alan Windy.
Thank you very much. First of all, alongside the railway lines, go right now to Goodwood. You'll see 1,000 units being built right along.
That's HDA. That's national.
So everything that happens here is national. Come on.
Goodwood is HDA.
Okay,
That's
thank
national.
you, Cameron, you had your opportunity.
Maar hy moenie lieg nie, hy moenie vir
ons.
ons mislei nie. It's a blue lie. That is a blue lie. Like the issue of jobs, he's a blue liar, and we must expose them.
Cameron, you're adding to Alan's time. I think
Thank
the
you very
best
much.
way you
Every
can...
time that happens, you should give me another minute. Every time he interjects. No, there's no spinning here, sir.
Forever spinning. The DA forever spins.
So you're just giving Alan more time on the mic.
Thank you very much. We are absolutely serious. I told you in the beginning that 46,000 units. If the ANC really wants to go and have a look at it, he always talks about what was delivered in the ANC time. Come along to some of those houses in Seabrook where the cracks are so wide that you can put your head out the crack without looking out the window in that house. But come and have a look at the households that have been delivered in Drakenstein in the city, and you will see solar panels on the roofs. You will see a new policy that makes sure that farm workers get access to a percentage of housing. You will see elderly getting access to that percentage of housing.
Thank you. We've got our next question. We are doing the rounds. Thank you. Lucinda Evans, one question, one panelist.
No, Lance. The issue of gender-based violence. You cannot give us 1 minute for an issue that affects all of us. Fadil, for you and PMC, okay, we have an issue with violence against women nationwide. 124 rapes a day. 11 women are killed in this country per day. If you take this Western Cape over, what is your plan in terms of gender-based violence? The second question is Hanover Park, Premier Windy, Lavender Hill, Hillview, Delft is still part of this Western Cape. 48 murders over a weekend, 98 murders this weekend, and 87 attempted murders. What is your plan while you're still here? Fadil and PMC, gender-based violence. I look at this panel, 14 panelists, 3 women. One of the panelists spoke briefly of gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is the next apartheid in this country. It is a human rights indictment. And look at who was killed and look at the services. There's fuck all services from the police. Zero. Zero. And let's speak about what happens with women in the rural area. It's even zero more zero. So when we start attacking women on the panelists because they're not eloquently to the male speech, then I want to say, cease on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Fadil, for you to respond first on gender-based violence, and then we'll come to Sammy on gender-based violence. Fadil? Go for it, Fadil. Yep. It will start
Hello.
with, yeah, here we go.
So on the issue of gender-based violence, let me just say that I was skipped over for the other question regarding women empowerment, so I'm just going to tap on there. Out of our 8 councillors, 6 are female. That's because we take women empowerment seriously at this party. This is not talk. And on the issue of gender-based violence, let me as a South African male apologize to women everywhere. My species is filth. We hurt our own. But this is not something that we can fix overnight. Remember, Lucinda, you and I come from the same area. We live in traumatized communities. Communities where men think nothing of themselves, therefore they think nothing of women. The only way we're ever going to beat this thing is we need to pick those boys up from the floor. And we need to retool them. And we need to teach and educate them that your life has more value than mine. That if I eat you, I eat my mother. This is what our boys don't understand yet. But you know why? Because he keeps them out of school. Because he keeps them out of work. Because he keeps our ghettos enclosed. This is why these things are happening. SAPS is a mess. A rape victim gets raped by the system a second time. It's what it is. Only we can fix this. But how do we fix this? We got to get rid of the people that create the conditions for you to get raped. That man sitting on the corner over there, acting as if he cares. You know, they spoke about Palestine and he says he cares about the people in Palestine. He doesn't even care about the people on the Cape Flats. When we were demanding an investigation into why our children, a commission into why our children were dying on the Cape Flats, his party his party refused it.
I gave you 30
When
extra
6
seconds to
farmers got
answer the
killed,
other,
his
to answer the
farming-
other
his
question.
party-
Thank you, Fadil. We'll go to Sammy. The question was posed to Sammy as well.
The PMC is an issue-based movement, and gender-based violence is a very serious phenomenon in our communities, especially the poor communities. So the PMC is serious about addressing this issue. I think we need to change the law in terms of this phenomenon. If a man beats a woman or a woman beats a man, they should not get paid. Because the problem is when that man gets out, he keeps on victimizing and intimidating his victims. So,
We want women to go to work and not to be intimidated when the taxis are striking.
So this is an issue that when we get into power in the Western Cape, we will completely change our approach in terms of the budget. You see, where this phenomenon occurs, there is no law enforcement officers. You see the law enforcement officers. Oh, shit!
It's a sign. It's a sign.
All right.
So, Lance, can I continue?
Sorry, Sammy. Neil, are you okay?
I have survived many assassinations.
Neil has survived far
So-
worse. Sammy, please.
I'm
10 more
almost
seconds.
done.
10 more seconds.
So we will reallocate the budget. We will redistribute the resources into those hotspot areas. And so that is our approach, that Because you see, in our communities, there's no trauma centers for gender-based violence. They don't get funded by the province or
Sammy.
national, and so we will reintroduce trauma centers into those areas.
Thank you, Sammy.
And deploy that law enforcement to that area.
I'm going to move your chair also. Alan, the second part of the question was posed to you.
Thank you very much. And Lucinda, thank you for raising that question. The Constitution determines how a province is supposed to operate. When I came into power 5 years ago, I changed that and I said we will take money away from education and health and put it towards the safety plan. I got the best brains I could internationally and locally. You are making a joke of those individuals, but I got the best people possible. We put 1 billion rand.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
You're giving me more time.
Everyone, sorry, may I ask, ladies and gentlemen, please allow Mr. Windy to conclude. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Please continue. Alan, please continue.
So I put 1 billion rand towards the safety plan boot side in partnership with the city to put extra law enforcement officers to the 13 highest murder hotspots in our city. And then we put the violence prevention plan together. So that is about getting ahead. That's how do we get a young boy, before he gets into the gangs, gets pulled back into school, etc. And part of it is the gender-based violence issue, because it is a major scourge. Men should hang their heads in shame in our country. We have one of the highest rates in the world here as well. And this is totally unacceptable. 2.6 billion now going to violence prevention in this.
That's your time, including the interruption. There's a question here at the front.
Good morning, everybody. I actually just have, firstly, I have a comment for Mr. Winder, and then I have a question for you, Mr. Heron. Just going back to the Western Cape creating jobs, we have proof that small business owners in a particular race group, I will not mention, are moving from provinces like Gauteng and KZN, relocating in the Western Cape. So they are retrenching their workers in KZN and Gauteng and rehiring people in the Western Cape. And these people come from a specific demographic racially, all right? May I say it? I don't know. I may say, these are white people, all right? Mr. Heron, your party has said that, the Good Party has said that you want to rebalance South Africa. Can you briefly tell us what that means, please? Thank you.
That briefly is 60 seconds. Go.
Rebalancing South Africa is redressing the historical deprivation of the vast majority of South Africans. And you cannot build a just South Africa on an unjust foundation. And South Africa has not addressed the history of our country. We have not redressed the deprivation of centuries prior to 1994. And until we start to redress the social, the economic, the spatial injustices of the past, we will not build a just and fair South Africa into the future. And that's why we have 55% people living in poverty and people living in gang fire every single day and night on the Cape Flats. But I want to say, I have to, because you allow stats to be thrown around here without them being challenged. Alan Winde said he gave 1 billion rand, took it from education and health and put it into a safety plan. That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen a government leader do. You know, his promise was that he would halve the murder rate. First of all, what an absurd objective to have, halve the murder rate. So we must, the other half of people must get murdered. The second thing is, it hasn't worked. In 2019, when the plan was introduced, 1,500 people were killed in those hotspot areas. Last year, 1,800 were killed. The plan is not working.
That is your minute. Thank you. Ashraf.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. There is a question from the floor. Thank you. Neil de Beer already fell. It's, we don't want any more accidents. Ashraf, please go ahead.
Ashraf Ali, representing Hanover Park Cricket Club. I'm the club president. I've got a live situation to report. The lady spoke about gender-based violence. My question is directed to the Premier. And you will hear me saying not our Premier, the Premier, because he's not a Premier for everybody. We have a live case where the ward councillor is currently, and there's a court case this morning, for allegedly raping a citizen in Hanover Park. We understand innocent until proven guilty. Our question, and his colleagues of mine from Hanover Park, our question is, how come this particular individual is not suspended? To the point, and I'm a sports activist. We talk about opportunities. Sport is also an opportunity. You can build youngsters, male and female, to become the leaders of this country through sport. Sport is part of education. The Premier, the Mayor, I'm glad he's not here because I will take him on. The Mayor, the Premier, the MECs, the mayoral committee members, they come into Hanover Park.
The question is, Ashraf, what is your question to the Premier?
My last question, this same individual has got 19 cases against him, of which 4 or 5 are gender-based violence. The Premier is selective. Let me tell you, this person is also the sub-council chairperson of Claremont, Crawford, Hanover Park, Kenilworth, Lansdowne, and Rondebosch.
Thank you, Ashraf.
How do they allow this?
Let's let Alan respond, and then we need to take one question from this lady at the back here. Alan.
I mean, obviously, you started off by saying people are innocent until proven guilty, but I'm... Of course. So ask the judge.
They didn't give Zuma that benefit.
But Mr. Ali, I'll tell you what. Bring me the affidavit, and I will come and lay the charge with you at the police station. Yes,
No
it was
charge,
within
no
my
charge.
power.
No charge. Albert Fritz had no charge against him.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, everybody. We have a question from the front here. Thank you, Ashraf.
Sir. Thank you. My name is Notuke Lamakotli, so I am from Action SA, Team Fix SA. Allow me to bring you to our own suffering. I'm from a party that believes in South Africans first. We are currently dealing with a situation where the Treasury and the Department of Social Development has cut the financial support for NPOs by 50%. We are literally standing on the verge of what could become a humanitarian crisis. I want to know, from the 3 biggest parties here, what are they going to do to assist vulnerable communities, disability communities, the elderly, because our NPOs are doing the work that our government should be doing. And if they are not supporting them, who must do it? And on top of that, tell us, what are you going to do to implement a basic income grant that we have been calling for as a civil society for years? We need help. The most vulnerable in South Africa need your help. What are you committing to do as the 3 biggest parties on this panel today?
Thank you. Let's start with the governing party of the country, ANC.
Is this a closing statement?
This is the last question, and then we'll go to closing statements.
I think the reality is, I mean, it's very difficult in 90 seconds to deal with a manifesto. Ours has got 6 pillars, and very much part of that is the issue of the work we do in communities. And when it comes to young people, when it comes to women, to be honest, we've had a very strong youth league and more recently a weak youth league, but we invest a lot in trying to rebuild our youth structures. Secondly, our women's league is now stronger, but we are the only party, and it's not just about representation, but we are the only party that has a minimum of 50% of all of our councillors, of all of our MPs being women. No other party does that. No other part. Which other party? Which other party? No. So the issue, so I'm saying you have to have an integrated strategy around youth. If we look at the issues of substance abuse, gangsterism, the issue of abuse of women, and I just want to, for the record, to say the gentleman from Hanover Park, they raised the issue about a councillor. Do you know, Mr. Witten, that there is a chief director in the Western Cape Provincial Government who's appearing in a criminal court on rape charges, and he has not been suspended. So that tells you a lot about whether you are actually, as a government, going to deal
Thank you, Cameron.
firmly.
We need to.
Sorry,
we need to
more
allow-
than a minute.
Let's go to the official opposition in the national government. Mr. Alan Windy, on behalf of the DA, the party's response to disabilities and vulnerable communities.
So I think I want to say thank you very much for that question. It's a really pertinent question in our society. And of course, where we have to deal with it in the province, we only have got 0.1% GDP growth in our country. And the consequence of that is, as a province where we don't raise our own taxes, we get given a division of revenue, and we've got to fit all of the demands within that division of revenue. And your point about the role that NGOs play, it is such a critical point in our society. And unfortunately, we were cut in the middle of the year by 1.1 billion just in education and health, 7 billion over the next 3 years, 150,000 people leaving other provinces because they're not getting services there and coming to this province, and it puts immense pressure on us. And we've got to have a huge fight because we do not get our fair share of the budget. We are the 3rd most populous province with massive demands, and we get the 5th most money. Limpopo gets more money than the Western Cape. And that is the problem, because it's the funding that's got to go to the NPOs that offer this amazing service that they do. And it is a massive crisis. And we have to get the economy going in South Africa, because that's the only way we can fund the real issues that are facing our citizens. And we've got to make sure we keep growing the economy here in the province.
1 minute, Nazir, to respond to the question.
Thank you very much, Lance. Lance, I think the young woman asked about what we are doing for disabled people and a basic income grant. Firstly, the EFF has the highest percentage of women public reps, not 50%, much higher than 50%. Men are actually in the minority in the EFF. So that's the first point. The second point is we also have a disabled, wheelchair-ridden member of parliament in the EFF. We do everything to make sure that she gets about comfortable and represent disabled people. So, and about the basic income grant, I think, you know, it's no fault of a matriculant that he cannot get into university because there's no space, or that he cannot get a job because we failed to create jobs. So government must pay that university student or that matriculant at least R1,000 to get around, to be able to find a job, right? And graduates who are unable to find a job because both the ANC and the DA are incapable of industrializing and creating jobs for our people and providing opportunities for people to be entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Nazir.
It's no fault of their own.
That is your minute. Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I know that a number of us wanted to ask questions. There's still plenty of questions to be asked. There are still plenty of answers that need to be given, but we have a time constraint. We have asked the parties to be here for a specific amount of time.
Excuse me.
I will give...
Sorry, can I say, Tando and I are the youngest people in this room. We are 19 years old. Old people have been given a chance to speak, but we have not been given a chance to speak. We need to ask questions as well as young people. Can we be given a chance?
Absolutely,
Thank
sister.
you so much. No, I've heard everything. I mean, the DA has let us down as the youth so many times, especially as black youth. But what were we expecting from someone who went to class with Oppenheimer? He can't lead. He cannot lead. Now, my issue is that Cape Town has, or rather the Western Cape, has the highest crime rate in South Africa, and nothing has been done about that. I, as a young person, I'm a political science student in the University of Cape Town. I have read all the manifestos. Of course, I did not bother myself with Action SA because they can't even sit conference. I don't understand what they're doing here in the elections. My question is for the EFF. What is your plan with the crime in the Western Cape? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nazir, yeah, just keep the mic close to you, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Our approach to crime is very different from the DA. The DA wants to put drones in the sky and boots on the ground. That's the tertiary level of dealing with the scourge of crime, violence, and gangsterism in our communities. You have to go at the primary level. You have to look at what makes people want to become criminals. Here in the Western Cape, we know about high levels of poverty, especially amongst African and colored people. Those are some of the determinants that lead to people becoming criminals. So we must address that, the poverty levels, the issues of health levels. There's very little other opportunities for people who are colored or African in the poorer communities. And this is where the DA has failed. So we are going to address the issue of crime both at the primary level and the secondary level to kind of determine. Shut up, Cameron, you had your chance, you failed. So we will address it even at the primary level.
Thank you, Nazir. That's your
Sorry.
minute. That's your minute. Yes.
Thank you.
This is the final question. Final question,
okay.
and then
No
closing
problem.
statements.
I have a question, right? And just small context. Every year, at the beginning of the year, we know in an institution of higher learning and any institution, be it it's a university of technology and all of that, there are strikes. We have to understand that, and we understand that the strikes, number one, basically come from the fact that NSFAS is dysfunctional. In the country at large, it's dysfunctional in terms of institution of higher learning, right? So I see a lot of times we come back and we say, hey, we need to help the youth, we need to assist the youth. So now my question is directed to the NC, because we had a chance to engage with NSFAS spokesperson and he was just rhetoricing us. So my question is, number one, what is the plan with NSFAS? Because primarily in the Western Cape, the NSFAS cap is at 45,000, races in Western Cape go up to 100K. So we are saying someone who qualifies for NSFAS, meaning it's a student who's poor or previously poor, is expected to cover the 55K, I don't know from where. So now my question is, in particular as a student in UCT who's a beneficiary from NSFAS, I'm expected to come up and pop up with 65,000 or 55,000 depending on the price of my race, not knowing where it comes from. So what's the plan with that? What's our plan with NSFAS? And what is our plan in terms of NSFAS and in relation to people coming from high school and integrating to varsity? What is the plan with that? Are we not, especially when we say we are in touch with the youth, we are in touch with our women, can we answer these questions that matter, that speak to the youth and the women?
Thank you very much. Cameron, your answer. The parties sitting here are very well funded. I think that all parties should also give to a special fund for education.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the question. The issue is that when the apartheid government governed, in terms of access to higher and further education by black people in general, African, colored, and Indian, and if you look at those figures then and you look at now, the first point I want to make is that there has been a massive improvement, especially with women, in terms of further and higher education. But you're absolutely right. And this is our narrative as the ANC. We've delivered, but mistakes have been made. Now, NSFAS, as we speak, let's be honest, doesn't have a board. It doesn't have a board because, you know what, things have been captured. The party who I refuse to actually call the MK party, I call them the Zuma party, they allowed this country to be captured by the Guptas and their own leader, hold on, and their own leader refused to even go to the Zondo Commission to explain that capture. So the reality is that we have a problem in this phase. Corruption, wherever it comes from. Corruption.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Cameron. That is your time. That is your time. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. I thank you very much. I know that we've got the First Peoples here as well. We were unable to ask all the questions. I need to wrap. MK, members of the MK party, if you wouldn't mind, please sitting down. Thank you, Cameron. Cameron, Cameron, you had a minute. I would now like to move to the closing statements. Cameron, thank you. Thank you. It's being decided in a court of law. We will go to closing statements now. I'd like to start on the end and work our way down this way. Thank you very much, Cameron. At least there wasn't somebody sitting on it. All right. Closing statements, ladies and gentlemen. We'll start with Fadil Adams from the NCC. We'll give you 10 seconds.
Well, I do in 10 seconds what you do in 3 hours, Nazir.
All right. The NCC. He has made accusations, sir.
Mr. Whitten, I need to go. I have another interview.
But I understand that, but we do need to wrap this up. Fadil Adams, you have 1 minute and go.
You know, people get the government that they deserve. So can I just ask the former bedfellows to just stop this, man? So people get the government they deserve. And we got the government that we voted for. You heard it, the Premier said it himself. He said, I spent 1 billion rand on safety and security. Angus Mackenzie says proudly on Facebook, he took 100 of those leap officers for Bonteheuwel alone. When we ask him about the state of the roads in Bonteheuwel, Angus says the area is too unsafe. I can't get a contractor in to fix the roads. The Premier and his favorite Holborsel have just admitted that they wasted their money. And the Premier's come out and admit, oh, by the way, I took it from your children's education. That's what's wrong with this province. We are allowing people who do not live our reality to make the decisions by which our children die. You are just bloody disrespectful, man. Can I speak? Yeah.
I'm saying it's evil what the DA have done. And you can't be accusing us. You had 30 years to speak.
I'm sorry,
and you still
sir,
want to speak.
Sir,
You
I'm
can't
sorry.
speak.
No.
It's done.
No.
No, he gave it to me. He gave it to me.
No. I'm sorry. Faisal, closing statement, please.
I think IOL needs to get more security around, honestly. So just in closing statements, I must say, Mr. Windy, I predominantly came here to deal with the Democratic Apartheid Party and to say that in the end of the day, we need to understand something, that he was 100% right when he was alluding to the idea that there is no, you are not the tentacles. The DA is not the Zionist tentacles. They're the main body of representation internationally of Zionists in this country. That's number one. The tentacles you're talking about is Bosa. Where's Bosa? And you're going to get fired by Musi Mehman because you went. He's going to fire you this afternoon for what you've done. That's called the bullshit party. You're right. And then the second one is this lady here. You want to talk, sorry, with all due respect to you, yes, you can't point her out on the GBV issue and females because that doesn't come to count here because they shouldn't have a voice because they are Zionists. Under this country, under the Western Cape, it is our party. Our member of parliament, the Honorable Mansour Sheikh Imam, that brought the motion in parliament to downgrade the Israeli embassy. You people did nothing, including the NC. You are now riding on the bandwagon.
Thank you, Faisal. That is your time. Brett Herron, 1 minute to plead your case.
Thank you, Lance. I would like to challenge the people of the Western Cape and the media, Lance, to stop the narrative that the Western Cape is the best run province in the country. The media does us a great disservice by not looking beyond the spin. And you need to start looking at the lived and the lived conditions that people are living under, and stop the spin and buying the spin that the Western Cape is the best run province in the country. It is actually not. And you cannot rely on Auditor General reports, because the Auditor General will just measure whether you are governing within the law. Governing within the law is not an achievement. An achievement is what is the outcome of your government. And in any event, how you rely on the Auditor General's report, when, for example, I reported the Strandfontein tent to the Auditor General, 44 million rand they spent for 6 weeks in that homeless tent. The Auditor General said they would investigate it. That year they got a clean audit. There's not even a mention of the Strandfontein tent, while the SIU found that it was fraud and corruption, and the SIU sued for the money to come back.
Thank you, Brett. Akolile, sir, we're doing closing statements. This is your last minute. Akolile, please go ahead.
I just want to concur. You can't be the most murderous province at the same time and be the best run province. It doesn't make sense. You can't have the most people killed in this province and be the best run as well. I want to challenge Alan Winde. In 2019, the Supreme Court of Appeal gave an order for the Western Cape government and the city of Cape Town to expropriate land in Marikana. Last year, 4 children were killed, were electrocuted, because they don't have basic services, because that land has not been expropriated by the DA-led government. Children continue to die in Philippi, in Marikana, to this day, because they don't have electricity. Because Alan Winde, and I met with him in 2019, he said he was waiting for the Supreme Court of Appeal judgment. The Supreme Court of Appeal judgment is out. It says that that land must be expropriated. It has not been done. It should be shameful that the DA has acknowledged that they've taken money from education and health in this province. We must deal with them on the 29th of May and make sure that they are removed from power.
Thank you. Angela Sobey, closing statements, 1 minute.
So, you have in the build-up to this election parties that have failed and continue to fail the citizens of the Western Cape and of South Africa, that are back here using emotive statements to make popular statements and to raise emotions of the voters, when in actual fact, our people in the Western Cape and our people in South Africa are under siege in terms of, with relation to unemployment, substance abuse, gender-based violence and femicide, and all the socio-economic issues that affect us as this country. We cannot sit here and pretend as though these issues are not affecting us while we pay attention to certain issues. What is required in terms of the communities of the Western Cape is a holistic solution to all the socioeconomic ills, and to work with the people and for the people in governing for the Western Cape. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. All right, Cameron, closing statement.
Thank you, Lance. I've indicated that we have a manifesto based on 6 key pillars. Our argument is that the people of the Western Cape are being shortchanged by not benefiting from the national investment that would make everyone, especially the poor, the working class, and the rural poor, and women in particular, benefit. Because the DA is governed for the few and fought national government, what would be best to have a united, prosperous Western Cape is to remove the DA and have a progressive government in this province that can work with national to deal with the issues. The DA, since they came in, education has dropped from place number 1 to number 5. When it comes to the issue of bachelor passes in former fee-free schools, quintile 1 to 3, Limpopo province is getting more bachelor passes than the Western Cape because they've neglected Manenberg, they've neglected Khayelitsha. The DA doesn't want a minimum wage. The DA refuses to move on land, they refuse to empower. I think that black economic empowerment is wrong.
Thank you, Cameron. That's your minute. Thank you, Cameron. Let's move on to Sankara. Sankara, you have 1 minute, sir, and your minute starts now.
Okay, thank you. Our position is clear. We want 2/3 majority in order to make sure that we capacitate the state to make sure that there's employment in higher scale. We industrialize this country. And also to make sure that the age restriction of 35-year-olds, and then after 35, you can't get opportunities, is reactionary. And it also shows the semi-illiterate of the ANC people who can't even respond to NSFAS issues of the kids. Because President Zuma made the NSFAS as a grant. They reversed it because Blaine Zimande has been milking NSFAS. So they've been reversing everything. That is why they don't care about this thing. He cares about the MK logo, Zuma this and Zuma that. They can't think beyond that. But they lost the court case. They lost the court case because, yes, because Mr. Doc Moore is illiterate like his comrades. Amanda.
Thank you, sir. Feroz, your closing statement, please.
Thank you very much. Look, it is clear that the status quo is unsustainable and we cannot endorse it any longer. When we talk about crime prevention and the 1 billion rand that was invested in that, it would have been much better spent to stop criminalizing our people on our fisher villages and our local communities. Just a few months back, our fisher villages were arrested. People in our fisher villages were arrested for trying to put bread on the table. We also see that in farming communities, we have children aged 15 to 18 unable to go to school. And when they are 18 years, they are evicted from the farms because they are no longer of use to the farmers. Our laws need to change to protect our people. When we talk about crime prevention, we hear that our NGOs have been the ones instrumental in our communities to ensure crime prevention, looking at gender-based violences, but their funding has been cut by the frameworks we see prevalent today. We need to stop this. We need to see our young people stop being demonized. We see the boots on the ground actually demonizing our young people. Petty crimes. People are being arrested for petty crimes and put through the system and come out at the end of the day with a hopeless sense of what do we do now?
Thank you, Feroz. That is your 1 minute. Lumka Mkutlo.
Thank you, Lance. Thank you, everybody. What we as Build One South Africa are saying is that it is in time for change. These elections are going to be transformational if South Africa uses their power to vote for the right party. And we're not a part of the Moon Party, don't worry. We've never been. We do not believe being part of any Moon Party. So stop with the propaganda, thanks. So what we are saying as Build One South Africa is that we will grow the economy for jobs, we will reform education for jobs, we will reform our police for jobs, for safety. What we'll do is we'll build a capable state for jobs so that we are a progressing nation that is globally competitive. This is not the time to vote for people that have been in power for so long and nothing has changed, but we need to make the change and find expression in our votes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Nazir.
very much, Lance, the EFF will build state and government capacity capable of... Thank you very much. Shut up, Cameron. Lance, the EFF will build state and government capacity. It won't be like the DA where you have matriculants running government and they need to outsource every function. We will, for example, have a state construction company that will drastically reduce homelessness in this country and in this province. So, for example, 600,000 houses or people, families on the waiting list with the DA's track record of 5,000 houses per year, it will take 120 years. The EFF needs 1 term, 5 years. If we don't eradicate that backlog, don't vote for us again. But I'm sure we are going to eradicate that backlog because it will be a state-controlled housing construction company that will not just be responsible for houses, but building hospitals, schools, taking care of roads. There won't be roads with potholes. You can't have unemployed people and still have infrastructure problems. Train the people to do the work, Alan, and that would help us. And that would help us drastically reduce.
Thank you, Nazir. That is your 1 minute. Sammy, over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I think South Africans need to realize that our country is in big trouble. I've been here for the last hour. And I've looked at the panel, I've listened to them. I've seen the parliament, both at national and provincial and local level. Our municipalities are, you see, this is the problem.
Nazir.
Because they don't bring solutions. These guys are the biggest threat to our democracy. Because look at they like a circus in Parliament. So moenie nou my gat krap nie. Jy gaan dit kry. So do I have more time?
You have 20 minutes.
So what we are saying is the PMC. We will put the people's issues first. And the party politics must stop in South Africa. Because these parties are putting the interest of their parties first instead of the interest of the people. That's why our people that's why they're creating systems and they're entertaining systems.
Thank you, Sammy.
That keep
Thank you. Thank you, Sammy. That is your minute with the extra time for the interruptions. Neil de Beer, UIM, closing statement, please, sir.
Yeah. Chairman, I think I'm the only person on this panel that fell today and rose today. Yeah, I have your docket, so we'll talk about that later. I think, Chairman, when you look at where we are, this was the platform for the people of this country to see what is the leadership of the future. I joined politics, I regret it, but I'll stick it out because I joined it for the right reason. I joined, it's my time, your time has come. I hope that the policies we do for the Western Cape will benefit all people. I heard people speak today about gender-based violence. Sir, you were so right about jobs and business. I think everybody sitting here has hope in one or other way. It's funny when we walk off here, we're all going to high-five each other and have coffee. It's funny for me, this political thing. I'm learning it.
Thank you, Neil.
But
Neil.
I think, thank you for this platform. And I hope
Thank you.
can get it done.
Thank you. Anthony Mitchell, IFP.
Thank you very much, Lance. I'd like to say thank you to all of you for being here today. This has shown us what politics should be. It's an interaction. It's a robust debate. It's citizen participation. You've aired your voices, and thank you so much for that, because that's how we're going to take this country forward. And it's each and every one of us, because we're all South Africans. And it's going to take all of us to come together and fix the country. It's in a hell of a mess, and we need to do that. That lady raised the issue of gender-based violence and femicide. Horrible crimes, violent crimes against children. Those are crimes that they have got high recidivism rates. We need to do something about that. These people need to be removed permanently from society, whether it's lifetime sentences or something like that. The IFP is calling for a national dialogue on the death penalty. Perhaps it's time we talk about that too. Judge Desai can work out the intricacies.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you. That is your minute. Right, and finally,
Thank you.
Mr. Premier.
Thank you very much, Lance. Thank you to all the colleagues here, all the South Africans here gathered today, because obviously we all have to work towards building a better country, a better province, and a better society. We will continue to focus on jobs, because jobs create opportunities, narrow the gap, and decrease poverty. That's exactly what jobs do. We will continue to do what we have been doing. And I also will continue to push boundaries and focus on safety, because without safety, we cannot create an ideal world and a place for opportunity. I will continue to focus on energy, because energy, or the lack of electricity, has actually caused the slowdown in our economic growth and the loss of so many jobs. And of course, as a province, education and health are the core mandate of a province. We will continue to push these boundaries. We will continue to make sure that we build a better province every single day that we have that responsibility. And then last of all, I'd just like to say to Nazir that you have a massive opportunity, because Mr. Paulson, you're in government in Knysna, and you are giving the people bodies in their water, piles of refuse.
Thank you, Alan. That is your time. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it. I want to thank our panel very much for being present here today. Sir, please, if I may. Thank you very much to our panelists for your attendance here. Thank you for honoring the invitation. Best of luck to you for May 29th. To our audience here gathered, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your input. The Opportunity is open to write to IOL as well. You can email us at opinion@iol.co.za. To our audience watching back at home and wherever you are, thank you very much for joining the stream. My name is Lance Witten. I hope that you have a wonderful day further and all the best for May 29th. Thank you. Thank you, sir.